It was a clear night in the village hidden in the leaves. The village itself was at peace, but all the active shinobi living inside its walls were ready for anything. While the Leaf Village didn't have the huge numbers like some of its rivals, it made up for it with the skill of its ninja. Many of the greatest ninja to ever live grew up in the Leaf, and with the will of fire ingrained into its most loyal ninja, they were considered the fiercest ninja in the world. But tonight was no ordinary night. Dark clouds loomed just out of sight, for figures slipped from shadow to shadow above the street. Always watch, always ready. But weren't just any ordinary ninja, these were the elite, these were the Umbu Black Ops. The Leaf's Umbu Black Ops had a reputation as some of the best in the world. Even the special forces of the other major villages dread the showdowns against the Umbu. But tonight they weren't fighting other ninja. Tonight they had a mission of grave importance. Suddenly the four tensed. A hooded figure stepped from the shadows. The way the figure walked, it seemed he was clear to his purpose. He had a hood covering his head as he walked with a deadly grace, as if without a care in the world, but he was worried. The man was the fifth Hokage. He was Fugaku Uchiha. The clan head had stared death in the eyes without a shred of fear, but on this night he wasn't worried for himself, he was worried for another. Someone he cared for so deeply he would challenge the world for. This person he cared for as if he was his own son. No, he thought. That boy was his son. Not by blood, but by the promise he had made to old friend. He would protect that boy like he had done 12 years beforehand. A ripple and the pair of Umbu readied, but he had no need of them yet. This second person was short, barely 5 feet 4 inches. The Umbu could tell she was dangerous. Anyone who had that symbol printed on their mask was never to be trusted. Fugaku stared into the emotionless eyes and the blank mask of the young woman in front of him. The kanji for root was printed on the forehead, which gave away her allegiance. But the man she killed for was someone Fugaku had little trust in. I will see him now. If this blank Umbu didn't like the order, she didn't show it, and with another ripple she was gone. Although Fugaku didn't normally travel with 4 Umbu guards, the man he was meeting was someone he could never trust. As such, the 5 other root Umbu hidden by genjutsu in the street put him on edge. The man known as the Wicked Eye had seen through the genjutsu, but it was a rather serious one the root agents were using. Not many without his eyes could see through it, another reason to put him on edge. The Wicked Eye felt that dark presence but didn't turn. He knew if this man tried something, he would never be victorious. Even the man's private army would crumble against his family. You summon me, Lord Hawk. I did 20 minutes ago. Danzo. I would suggest a more timely appearance from now on, though. He didn't meet the man's gaze, he didn't have to just yet. Pressing matters within the Foundation required my presence, was the instant reply from the one-eyed man. But Fugaku only smirked. Something I should know about. Danzo narrowed his eye. Root is an independent organization. Even independent of the Hokage, but always working for the future of the Leaf, Danzo said carefully, knowing he was on thin ice with the man in front of him. Fugaku knew that the seemingly disfigured man behind him was picking his words carefully, but he chose not to push, just yet. For knowing when the time to push and knowing the time to push hard only came once with that man. Danzo, I want weekly reports of all A-rank missions and bellow carried out by the Foundation. I know there are S-rank missions I don't need to know about, but that doesn't instill faith. He stated coolly, but his temper was anything but. With a snap of his fingers, 3 Umbu captains cornered Danzo, including the infamous Captain Wraith. Wraith was the leading Umbu captain of the Leaf, even more senior the Kakashi Hatake. With the tattered and torn black cloak and skull mask, the captain truly looked the part of her namesake. Her genjutsu was also extremely dangerous, as even those in the Umbu no longer allowed her to practice on them. To Danzo's credit, his didn't bat an eyelid, but the bead of sweat at his forehead still showed how tense he was. Now the Hokage turned, meeting the dangerous man's lone hazel eye. Now, the Hokage started. This is a show of my faith, Danzo. Captain Wraith will be my direct contact to Root, and all reports will go through the hands of the captain before coming to me. I expect reports on time and will be starting as of this week without delay. Danzo. He didn't falter, never. But against this man he was starting to bend. Any man would when facing down with the 2 gleaming eyes of Fugaku Uchiha. The Wicked Eye Fugaku. The man's reputation was known, but few truly knew the horror behind it, but Danzo knew. Many didn't because Fugaku killed any who could have warned those who wanted to know. Fugaku's body count was only beaten by the deadliest man to have walked the streets of the Leaf Village, Minato Namikaze. Danzo nodded. It was all he could do, with Fugaku's power and the three elite Andu as well as Wraith sounding him on all sides. If this standoff went hot, Danzo didn't rate his chances at more than 40%. Even with his hidden root agents around, he would not likely win this confrontation, so decided not to push the Hokage now. Will that be all this evening, Lord Hokage? His voice steady but not the least bit calm. Fugaku turned his back once more and started to walk away. Yes. That will be all, Danzo, and don't worry, Captain Wraith will be in touch, as well as keeping an eye on your little pets from now on. Walking slowly, Fugaku eddied himself, hoping that Danzo would try his luck against him. But deep down he knew the old man was smarter than to attack him here. So Fugaku simply kept walking, and while planning on what to do next after this minor victory. Wicked Eye Hokage, Chapter 2. Hello all, yes, this is another update. December 30th, 2017. Fugaku stirred. The sun gleamed in through his window and he rubbed the sleep from his eyes. His wife Mikoto wasn't beside him, knowing she must have been making breakfast for their sons. He let a smile grace his lips. Last night had been dangerous, but he had put Danzo in his place for the moment, and that was all he needed. With a sigh he rose from his bed. When looking out his window he could see the Hokage monument. Fugaku still couldn't believe he was the Hokage. 12 years on from that horrible night, he pondered how quickly it had passed. He wondered how Minato would have done things if he was still the Hokage. Fugaku knew he didn't always make the right choices. The botched Kumo peace deal and the Hyuga kidnapping proved it. Thankfully he had averted war in that situation, but it was still far too close for his liking. Rubbing his forehead he thought, if you were still here, old friend, they wouldn't have dared to face your wrath. But he avoided war and the countless deaths that would have come with it and the dozens that would have been from his own clan. Walking from his room he could hear his sons talking in the kitchen. He let another smile grace his lips. Those boys were the reason he fought on, the reason he would never back down from a challenge, and the reason he was getting so many gray hairs. As he walked through the door he was greeted with a smile and a kiss from his loving wife, a calm nod from his oldest son Itachi, a warm smile from his second son Sasuke, which he returned, and finally from the golden-haired boy at the end of the table with a mouth full of toast. He gave the brightest smile. Fugaku knew if Naruto's hair was red, he would be a miniature clone of his mother. Kushina's personality was identical as the boy's. Ever since Naruto could walk he made trouble in the Uchiha compound. Playing pranks on his adoptive family was something the young boy loved, and even though Fugaku had to discipline the boy, his pranks always brightened his day. Sadly, Fugaku knew the next few days weren't going to be as bright. Last night's talk would cast ripples. He knew Danzo was a sore loser if nothing else. But his oldest son's face, no matter how calm, Fugaku could read, and the boy had the right to be nervous. 00000. It wasn't often Itachi was worried for his father. His father had faced down the Nine Tails with the fourth Hokage and survived, so Itachi knew his father was powerful, but being a genius son he always worried for his father. Itachi knew of Danzo. His father had personally requested that Kakashi Hatake be his Umbu captain rather than join Root, something he was thankful for. But Itachi didn't like Umbu life either. He didn't like the killing, and it struck him as ironic that he was as good at it as he was. Itachi knew though that his father needed him to be strong. Having a firstborn son and clan heir as the third best Umbu in the Leaf provided his father a great deal of support and made sure no one came after him or his brothers. But nevertheless he had promised to take both of his brothers to the academy. It was his day off after a long mission, the ones Itachi normally liked. Being out of the village, away from politics, and not having to kill in a stealth recon mission. He finished his glass of water and gave a quick nod to his father and mother. Come now, brothers. He looked down and almost had a chuckle. Seeing both Sasuke and Naruto with their mouths full of toast was certainly unusual. But a quick and near undecipherable sentence sprang from Naruto eating contest. Was the most Itachi could make of it. Itachi had to admire both Sasuke and Naruto. Their rivalry went further than anything he had seen. Even the famous rivals Might Guy and Kakashi, or rather Guy challenging Kakashi all the time, didn't compare to these two. But their strengths and weaknesses showed in these contests. Naruto had endurance that matched that of a high jonin. Itachi had watched Naruto run 5 laps around the Uchiha compound, a 6-mile run each time, and given a 10-minute break he was ready again. Itachi knew that in the future Naruto would be a powerhouse endurance fighter, probably being able to fight at high levels even during full-scale battles for hours. But if so, he would be a target for an early death in battle, meaning he would have to rely on more than endurance, so his best chance of staying alive he would have be cunning as well as quick. Luckily Naruto had that in spades. His speed and cunning kept him out of the hands of Uchiha and Umbu alike after one of his pranks. But Sasuke, he was polar opposite. The Uchiha body type was nearly the same across the whole clan. Average chakra levels but a high chakra density. It allowed for precise chakra control along with powerful elemental jutsu. Itachi wondered if it was due to the far-distant ancestors' controlled breeding habits or just the fact that Uchiha that didn't make the cut were often cut down in battle. But to his younger brother's credit, he had larger chakra reserves than himself at his age. In the future Sasuke would be an excellent rapid strike shinobi. His higher-than-normal chakra reserves would allow his to stay in combat for extended periods of time without using too many high-level jutsu, even more so if he never awakened the Sharingan as it drained hefty amounts of chakra. But it would be his precision and ruthlessness in battle that would carry him to victory, even against other shinobi with high chakra levels and higher levels of endurance. The difference in the two boys was most noticeable in their spars. Sasuke would often beat Naruto down early, taking a near 3-1 win count over the blonde. But as Sasuke got tired he started to lose ground, and the win/loss would near be even after a dozen or so fights. It showed the limitations and strengths of both boys perfectly. In a true battle, a shinobi like Sasuke would easily beat a shinobi like Naruto in an early skirmish. But later into the battle, as the cracks started to show in both sides, a fighter like Naruto would gain a significant advantage over other nin. He always pondered to himself how powerful these two would become on their own. Both boys were the exact opposite, but they complemented each other perfectly. With experience and a few more years of training, they both of them would be legendary. For as all Leaf nin know, an individual is only as strong as his weakest skill, but with a carefully put together team and enough training, 5 B-rank nin could best an A-rank nin easily. Itachi looked down at both boys, his brothers. With a careful look at the sun, he realized they would both be late if they didn't leave soon. "Come now, we best be getting you to the academy before you're late. I know Irika wouldn't like to see either of you running in after he starts his lectures." As Sasuke and Naruto sprang from their seats and got to the door, he poked them both on the forehead, much to both the boys' annoyance. But he smiled along with them as he walked them out the door a few paces behind them. As they walked, he couldn't help but notice the similarities between them and their own fathers. "You two will certainly be great." "How great? Not even I could answer that. But your father's legend will be cast in shadow by the legends of you two. As you can see, it's still far from perfect. I would still like it to be a couple of 100 words longer, but I felt that this would do for the time being. Now, as for Naruto's strengths, I am really unhappy at how they portrayed in the canon. He was just as skilled as Sasuke in my opinion, despite what many thought Naruto wasn't stupid. He might not have been the sharpest shuriken, but he wasn't dumb either. Over the years, he had become rather good at reading people. He could read the people on the street like an open book: hate, mistrust, disgust, and sheer rage at him. But over the years, and with his clan's protection, they became less outspoken. But their hate never left. His adoptive father, and in particular his older brother, were much harder to read. But he had a fair idea. Worry. The two family members that he trusted the most were the best at keeping their secrets hidden, but he could see the worry etched in their faces. But his papa and older brother were the two strongest in the village other than Gramps Hokage. He would trust them to do right, always. As he got closer to the academy, he could already hear some of his friends, well, mostly just Sakura and Ino. But he liked them, and well, Sakura was cute, and if Sasuke didn't like her, it was better for him to bad his stupid brother was always acting so cool and got her attention. "See ya tonight, Itachi, you better help us train," Naruto said loudly as he and Sasuke waved goodbye. "Perhaps little brothers, just make sure you pay attention for Irika, understand?" he said back with a smile. Yeah, we might. But only if he talks about the awesome Hokages I'm going to surpass, Naruto yelled back with a foxy grin as Itachi waved one final time and vanished in a swirl of leaves. Despite Naruto not being the most popular kid in school, he still had a handful of good friends. Plus he thought if he got too much attention he would end up like Sasuke and his sometimes rather Uchiha sense of self-importance. His personal rival and prankster accomplice Kiba, the always sleepy and lazy Shikamaru, and finally the ever-hungry and friendly Choji. Apart, all the boys were rather normal, but together they became quite the escape artists. Ducking out under Irika's nose and sneaking back before some Chunin came looking for them. But now class had begun and Naruto had a plan. Now students, today we will be learning on how the environment affects strength, size and intensity of elemental jutsu, and the affects it could have on an opponent, Irika said dryly as Naruto started to space out. Pest, Kiba, he whispered. What, Blondie? Kiba mumbled in a bored tone. Naruto's and Kiba's rivalry was second only to his and Sasuke's, so the little nickname always annoyed Naruto, but he ignored it. Come on, let's sneak out. I bet Irika-sensei wouldn't even notice, he said slyly. Kiba was defiantly interested in what Naruto was saying. Hell, knowing that lighting jutsu would be stronger and reach a wider area while on water wasn't hard to figure out, and to cap it off, he and the 4 other troublemakers had mostly tuned out minutes ago. Well, except Shikamaru. Hell, he fell asleep once his head hit the table. Interesting, you got a plan? Kiba said softly, trying not to let Irika hear. Just how could you think I wouldn't have a plan? Naruto said with mock hurt, but scanned the room for watchers, and with a series of hand signs gave the code, on the green paint we move. Kiba smirked at this. Despite Naruto not being the smartest in class, he always came up with good plans and even better pranks, except for the time he switched Akamaru with a cat. He earned the nickname Tic-Tac-Toe Face that day from the scratches. But Naruto wasn't smirking while thinking of old pranks. Well, sometimes he was, but his smirk was a way to know something was going down. But just as Naruto predicted, he heard Mizuki walking down the hallway. Despite the smiles, he thought something was off with Mizuki, but he couldn't ever put his finger on it. Perhaps it was just all the pranks he played finally got to the man. Blunted shuriken hidden in his seat cover was a rather prickly prank to play on a man anyway. But with a crash and a bang plus a rather girly scream which gave Naruto his infamous foxy smirk, the classroom fell silent as door opened and in fell Mizuki. The man looked like he had just been 10 rounds with a Kage armed only with bowls of ramen. The blue-haired man was covered head to toe in old ramen broth and noodles as he picked himself up only to see a window fly open and a green paint tin sail past Urkua's head, straight into his. So with a thump and a worried Irika rushing to his side, all 4 boys made their escape, but with a stealthy 5th unseen and hot on their tails. Once far enough away from their overzealous teacher, the 4 boys agreed on a calm open patch of ground where they could relax. Of course, Shikamaru was the first to topple over with a phrase along with it, "Too troublesome, all that running." Naruto chuckled as Kiba begrudgingly gave him a small stack of bills. It seemed as if Naruto had won the bet on which phrase Shikamaru would say first. But Choji only smiled and opened another bag of chips, offering to each of his friends. "Hey Kiba," Naruto said, sitting back against a tree with a yawn. "Yes, shrimp," was the immediate response, and a tick mark on Naruto's forehead was enough to make Kiba smirk. The blonde boy's height was the only thing to set him off quicker than his hair color. Ignoring the comment, Naruto went on, "Who do you think will end up on teams once the final exam rolls over?" Naruto said in his signature thinking pose. Kiba too wondered about this. He had hoped he wouldn't end up of a team with Sasuke or the pink-haired fangirl, but he hadn't given much thought to it. Naruto, being always one to think around things, nudged Shikamaru with his foot. "Hey Shika, who do you think will be on teams?" he asked, guessing he wouldn't get much of a response back, but was about to be very surprised. "HN troublesome. But if you really want to know." The lazy boy rose to his elbow with a yawn. "First, Choji, Ino and myself, hell, our fathers are one of the greatest 3-man teams ever, so why change a good thing?" He shrugged, the same as Naruto. "Second, Kiba, Shino and the Hinata girl. It would make for a powerhouse tracker and recon team. And Inuzuka's nose, and Aburame's bugs and a Hyuga's eye would be a recon dream team." Kiba nodded at this. He had heard from his mother, sister, and multiple clan members that a team made of those three skill sets was a potent force. Then Shika smirked, after that more than likey, Sasuke, yourself, and Sakura. Naruto didn't know if he should be kinda happy or really happy. His brother was great, but he creatinely had his pain in the ass moments, and Sakura was cute, but the beatings he got from her some days were rather painful. As soon as Shikamaru was finished, the boys turned when they heard Knuckles cracking. But not if I kill him first. As Sasuke jumped on Naruto, and within seconds both boys wrestled with each other. In the commotion, Choji asked a simple but ingenious question, why them though? To which Shikamaru could only responded, potential. Character boy. Naruto Uzumaki. 12 years old. Still wanting to be Hokage and a full-time ramen addict. Above average in taijutsu, ninjutsu compared to the anime, but still no good at genjutsu. Along with the same outfit, but instead of the Uzumaki clan symbols on his shoulders, he has Uchiha clan symbols. Fugaku knew it was a way of telling everyone Naruto is part of his clan and under his personal protection. Sasuke Uchiha. 12 years old, warmer, kinder, and mostly more light-hearted. Mostly because he didn't watch his entire frickin' family, bar one, murdered and had to rewatch it when every Itachi meet him. But still has a very Uchiha sense of pride and overconfidence, but that is mostly tempered by his older brother who he looks up to. Still wearing his blue outfit and his duck butt hair. Itachi Uchiha. 17 years old, mostly the same except warmer and kinder, mostly because of his little brothers bringing him out of his shell. Normally found wearing his normal gray/black tunic and pants, and on his off hours wears a standard leaf flak vest as well. He is currently one of the most powerful ninja in the village, along with his father, the third Hokage, and Jiraiya. Does not have the Manjikyu Sharingan, but only time will tell. Now I have a special pairing for him, but I won't tell just yet. It's a surprise. 3. Fugaku Uchiha. Mid-40s. Look, I think that the age system in Naruto is pretty well fucked. Just saying, okay, but he should be about 44/45. You may have to look up a photo of him because he isn't a well-known character, but he is a good one to know about. Graying hair. Wears the normal Hokage robe, shin protectors, and the robe around his waist with white diamonds along the bottom. As for the rest, I know I'm being lazy, but I can't see many reasons why there would be more differences with them. I will do for bios for major characters as they come in, but other than that, that should be it. Thanks for reading, and if you read all that, you should treat yourself with a cookie. You deserve it, champ. Itachi appeared in the training ground. He always enjoyed it here. Peaceful and quiet was definitely his preference. At the moment, he could only hear a few thuds and light panting. Knowing Shursui was probably working on his Tanto and Shuriken combos, he had a few moments to himself. Itachi wondered, his Shuriken jutsu and Kenjutsu were already highly proficient, but so were his other skills. Both water and fire jutsu he could perform in a second's notice, and he had plenty of jutsu covering the other three elements, so he was looking for a challenge. Luckily, he had run across Jiraiya of the Sannin spying on a woman's bathhouse. The old man had acted the fool, but Itachi knew better. The man could probably hold out against himself and his father and more than likely beat Lord Third Hokage. Jiraiya seemed happy to meet him, even going as far to sign a copy of his finest work for him. He knew Kakashi would cross the ninja world for the book, so he was quick to add a string genjutsu to it so no prying eyes seen it. Least of all his mother. Itachi shuddered at the thought of what his mother would do if she ever caught him with that book, but a bead of sweat formed on his temple, knowing that even at his level there was someone still above himself that acted as a old lek. But to add to his surprise, another scroll was dropped into his pocket by the old man without him even noticing. The scroll of seals. Perhaps Fuinjutsu was something worth looking into. All of this pondering finally came to an end when he saw a glint of his left side, and in less than a heartbeat 3 of his own kunai were returned. One to counter the incoming one and a pair for the sender to worry about, but he knew the man that threw them was long gone from that spot. Hee getting slow. Itachi. The almost phantom voice rang out, sounding as if it was coming from all directions. He knew this was less than ideal for him. Shursui's speed alone allowed him to taunt like that, and his genjutsu was a frighteningly large step above his own. So with a blink and a pair of gleaming red eyes later, he prepared for battle. It began in a second. A dozen shuriken from each Uchiha prodigy canceled each other's out perfectly. Shursui cut the distance with his signature body flicker with an upward slice. but he dodged back, turning with the angle of the slash to conceal hand signs. Fire style. Great fireball jutsu. Itachi merely whispered, but the searing hot ball of flame was anything but a whisper. Shursui dodged beside it, feeling the flames burn through his coat, but smirking confidently. Fire style. Flame whirlwind jutsu. With a spiraling ball of flame, Itachi was forced high into the air, only to be met with 3 rising Shursuis. One at his 12, 6 and 3 o'clock. Time to up the level, Shursui, he thought to himself with a cool head. Wind style. Severing halo. Itachi focused his wind nature chakra into a razor-thin halo around his body before dispelling it in all directions. The 3 Shursuis never saw it coming, shredded within seconds, but a 4th shot up from the ground. Lighting style. Thunder shot. Extending his hands out, Shursui shot dozens of sparks at Itachi. Calm now, Itachi. As good as you are, you can't dodge this, Shursui thought to himself. But as a handful of sparks, Itachi flinched and Shursui was caught. Exploding clone jutsu. He cursed himself for not being more careful. With a single explosion, Shursui was sent plummeting towards the ground, barely managing to correct his fall to avoid broken bones on impact. But he was already back on the defense. It was the moment Itachi was waiting for. With a bone-bending kick, Shursui slid back, only held down by the chakra at his feet. Trying to regain the offensive was pointless. Itachi was hammering him. Every counter was being overcounted by his friend, but he finally pushed some room back, and with a body flicker he gained some distance. Both young men were panting. The speed and ferocity of the clash had caught both of them off guard. In an instant, Shursui was on the attack. A pair of clones covered his flanks. Uchiha style. Dance of the Sun Halo. Slashing with his tanto while forcing large amounts fire nature chakra, 3 bursts of flames erupted towards Itachi. But this was the very technique he was waiting for. If one was quick enough, they could weave through the flames, and now he had the pattern figured. With a burning feeling in his legs from the chakra, he bolted forward. Even Shursui was caught off guard. His best friend dashing for war, and the weaving through his flames awed him. He raised his left arm to block the kick Itachi had prepared, but it was a feint, and the knee that rammed into his chest emptied his lungs of air. The knee left him gasping on the ground, so with 2 fingers raised in surrender, Itachi knew he was the victor. Itachi was left panting. His best friend had not held back, but the smile he got from his best friend was worth his aching body. "Congrats, Itachi, you beat me?" The older of the young men said happily. "Come on, help me up," he said almost with a pout as he took several long breaths while Itachi helped pull him back to his feet. "You know you shouldn't be beating your elders, Itachi," he said, brushing the dirt off himself. "HMMPP, you're the one who threw kunai at me, Shursui," Itachi deadpanned. "Oh, now come on, there is no proof that was me. Probably just figments of your imagination. But anyway, you finally beat me fair and square, so my shout for Dango." Itachi sighed. There wasn't any way of getting out of this now that he had beaten him. Plus, he was in the mood for Dango, so they started to walk back to the leaf. An easy silence was broken by a rather serious statement from Shursui. "I'm not joking anymore, Itachi. You are finally stronger than me. Perhaps your genjutsu isn't quite up to par with me yet, but you have me outclassed in every other field. Even your speed is comparable to mine," Shursui stated, gazing forward. "Be that as it may, I wish only to protect those closest to me, Shursui," he said softly. "Yes, Itachi, I know, and I'm proud to know you as a peaceful man. But someday things might not be as easy, and being the strongest might mean you'll have to do a brutal task. This is after all the ninja world," Shursui finished while giving Itachi time to consider that comment. Once at the restaurant, Itachi ordered his favorite dango, noting there were only a pair of sticks left. "Yo, Itachi, I'm just going to the bathroom, I'll be back soon." So he decided to seat and was looking forward to his favorite meal with his best friend. "What the fuck do you mean no more dango?" He heard the shout coming from inside the restaurant but paid little attention. Their fault for not getting here sooner. Then a dose of killing intent capable of making stiffen forced him to look up. Before anything else, he suppressed a blush, noticing the barely covered assets of a rather dangerous woman. "Good afternoon, Miss Anko," he said calmly, but the mix of killing intent and the hidden blush was putting him under some pressure. "Those were the last 2. The snake mistress's voice was low and dangerously calm. My apologizes, Miss Anko, but you arrived too late, he stated as smoothly as he could. The leaf snake mistress wasn't an opponent he wanted to face at the minute. Perhaps another store has them in stock? She took a step forward, now facing down eye to eye with the offending young man. Itachi, to his credit, was now trying very hard to not gaze down, or he may incur the snake mistress's wrath. The predatory smirk she gave him almost reminded him of Naruto's foxy pranking smirk, but this had a far more deadly tone about it. This very store sells the best dango in the leaf, and I refuse to go anywhere else, she said evenly, now just inches from Itachi's eyes. With the dozens of S-rank missions he had performed, Itachi didn't crack under pressure, but this woman was certainly pushing him. With a sigh he relented. Well, perhaps I could allow you a single stick. Dango should always be eaten with company. Itachi was ever playing the peacemaker, and he knew the snake mistress's reputation, and a fight at close quarter with her wasn't something he would look forward to. But to his noticeable surprise, her mood changed immediately. Sitting down, she simply hummed as she picked up the delicious sweet. Well, I never thought that I would be sharing dango with someone. But with your own reputation, Itachi, I thought it be that I didn't fight you for it, she cackled. Itachi smiled at this. Your own reputation precedes you, Anko. Again the predatory smirk returned. HMMPPP. She fussed with dango, and he mouthed before swallowing. To think that the mighty Itachi Uchiha has heard of little old me. I'm flattered. She fluttered her eyes before putting down her dango, while leaning and crossing her arms under her rather exposed assets, making them even more noticeable. Itachi's eyes widened slightly while forcing himself not to break eye contact with her. Flattery or not, you are quite well known. Your interrogation skills are highly sought after, he said, all the while knowing a certain white-haired man would give nearly anything to be in his seat right now. Thankfully, Shursui walked back over, sitting down beside Anko. Oh my Itachi, having lunch with the craziest bachelorette in the leaf. What would your mother say? He deadpanned. Okay, maybe Shursui coming back wasn't as good as I thought. However, Anko, with the ever-present smirk, put her arm around Shursui. Before he could say something, a purple and white cobra slithered onto his shoulder merely a few inches from his eyes. One body flick and girly screaming on the roof above them was all it took for Anko to start laughing again, but this time it was honest laughter. Wiping the tear from her eye, Anko composed herself. How rude of someone to interrupt you telling me how great I am. She gave an honest smile to the Uchiha heir. I'll see you around, Itachi, giving him a saucy wink before disappearing in a swirl of leaves, leaving a stunned Uchiha and an empty plate of dango that Itachi didn't even notice. Naruto sat against the tree, pouting with a mouse under his left eye, glaring death wishes at his older brother, who in turn was glaring down at his offending younger brother. That's what you get for biting me, Dobe. The teeth marks on his left arm did look rather painful, but the punch he landed was a solid one. But it made you let me go, and if it wasn't for me holding back, I would have flattened you, team. The continued bickering was starting to get on the nerves of the lazy Cloud Watcher, although Kiba was still snickering. Hey Shika, not a very common ninja technique that he said somewhat jokingly, but the Cloud Watcher had been paying closer attention. True. But if it was life and death, a bite might be just what you need, he said with a yawn. HAC team, there isn't one that technique that is useless to a ninja. A sharp-eared, loud-mouthed blonde piped up, only to receive a knock on the head. Shut it, Naruto, what would mom say if she caught you skipping school? With that statement, Naruto paled, followed by another glare. You wouldn't dare, team. My ramen intake is low enough after I painted all of Dad's Hokage robes bright orange. A fit of laughter could be heard from Kiba and a chuckle from Choji. Maybe I could let this slip if, say, my chores would be done by someone else for the next 2 weeks. Naruto entered his cool shinobi thinking pose. But to the casual observer it looked as if he had swallowed sour candy. To be honest, Sasuke couldn't understand why his little brother was taking so long. On the one hand, chores for 2 weeks was a lot, but his ramen supply would be cut to a mere 9 bowls a week. A rather low amount, knowing Naruto could eat 6 bowls in a single sitting and still have dessert. But with a sigh, the blonde finally gave in. Okay Sasuke, chores for 2 weeks and you want tell mom, he said, but the smile was quick to return with a chuckle. You should have seen your face when I bit you, it was priceless, he said, raising his hand to be pulled up by his brother, who only shook his head. You know, if you spent more time practicing and not stuffing around, you might have been able to land a hit on me, he said with signature Uchiha smugness, helping Naruto up. Oh well, it's nearly lunch, so we may as well be heading back, Choji piped up, to which most agreed. So with that the boys started on their way back to the academy, with one rather bummed out he couldn't look at more clouds. But unbeknown to them, a masked figure had been watching them closely. Deep in the underground tunnels of the village, a dark cave system sprawled out. It was very Spartan in nature. No objects could be seen that were no used for combat or sleep, and the halls looked as if they had never been finished. This was the foundation. It was Spartan because a true shinobi didn't need comforts. True shinobi only needed a mission and a place to sleep. In one of the larger caverns, a group of young children stood silently and at attention. Several masked umbu flanked them, watching for any sign of weakness, while their supreme commander stood above them, watching like a hawk but not the least bit interested in them. He was waiting for reports. In an instant, an umbu appeared, kneeling at the side of his master.
B682 reporting, Danzo-sama.
A nod was the only indication to continue. The boys were able to sneak out Eigen. The group was made up of the Inuzuka clan heir, the Nara clan heir, the Akimichi clan heir, and the Uzumaki weapon. But they were also tailed by the second heir of the Uchiha clan. Danzo remained still, considering his options. He had always wanted more of the Leaf's clan members in the Foundation. As shown by Fu and Toryun, the pair of them were the best the Foundation had, and if he had access to more Kekkai Genkai, his offensive capabilities would be far larger, but the third, fourth, and now even the fifth Hokage had put a stop to the plans. The fifth had even cut the Foundation's funding for new members and reducing the amount of orphans they could take in. It wasn't a major blow, but it was enough to always keep the Foundation in check while also keeping them weaker than the Umbu Black Ops. So with the weapon as close to the other clan heirs, he could have brought them into the Foundation and made them stronger, but now with Fugaka's blood son now in the mix, he couldn't risk kidnapping any of them. Plus, there was now Commander Wraith watching the Foundation for the fifth and the reports he had to give up. He glanced back at the group of children as one toppled over while immediately been taken away. The others didn't even glance at their fallen comrade in fear of punishment. With all he needed to know, he waved his puppet away and began his way back up to the village. Moving at his pace may have looked slow, but it allowed his sensor abilities to be maximized, and a dangerous feeling washed over him. Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. A nearly silent voice rang out, and within seconds his personal guard was around him. Oh, come now, Danzo. You haven't become fearful in your old age, have you? For guardsus rather than two. The voice rang out again, and at Danzo's signal his men steadied, but did not let their guards down. With a creak, a tall figure rose from the stone floor, smirking the whole way. If your pets make so much as a move, they will die. Dasno opened his unbandaged eye to meet the yellow eyes of the snake Sannin. You're early. Danzo wasn't one for deviations in plans unless they suited him, but having the snake Sannin sneaking around inside the Foundation wasn't something he liked. Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. I'm so sorry, Danzo, but an urgent message brought me here on business. The smirk on the snake's lips wasn't something Danzo liked, and the fact that he had just told Danzo he had a spy in the leaf wasn't something he let slip. The snake had wanted Danzo to know. Well then, should I expect to find this messenger of yours sneaking around in here too, Orochimaru? He answered coolly, but the full-blown grin he got for the snake made him everything but cool. Oh, if only you knew, you old fool. The snake laughed in his head. Oh, don't worry, this spy of mine isn't someone you could just find, Danzo. He is out of reach, even for someone such as yourself. The wordplay was finally ended with a sharp burst of killing intent from the old man, which certainly got the Sannin's attention, albeit with a dangerous look as well. Enough with the game, Snake. Do you have what I requested you for? He said, almost losing his cool. A smirk traced its way back across the Sannin's face, but this was different. More sinister. More bloodthirsty and far more dangerous. Why, of course, Danzo, my skills in the area are unmatched. Slowly removing a glass jar from his coat, the Sannin merely held his hand out, and while one of Danzo's pets checked it, but with a nod from one of the root member, he tossed it to the old man. With his cane embedded into the stone floor, Danzo caught it with his left hand. Only one. Do you take me for a fool, Snake? With that low and dangerous voice, 12 hidden root nin surrounded Orochimaru. But that bloodthirsty smirk never left. Kuku, you assume so little of me, Danzo. I would never willfully keep things from you. But the girl was sharper than we gave her credit for. Once she deduced what I was after, she gouged one out with her own fingers just to keep it from me. Luckily for us, she wasn't quick enough for the second. The blood-chilling tone he was using did little to ease Danzo's nerves. He narrowed his lone eye, but he found no giveaway that the Sannin was lying. But he didn't have to trust him either. What of the other squad members and her body? The Sannin slumped a little with boredom. Oh, come now, Danzo, you shouldn't ask questions that you already know. But with the dangerous look he got, he decided to tell the old man. Squad members were all Kia by my own men. The battle was made to look like it had been done by an infamous group of missing nin and samurai from the cold north of Iron Country who take great joy in flaying their enemies. But the girl's body was dumped several hundred yards away to look as if she had escaped somewhat and that she had destroyed his own eye to keep it from falling into the wrong hands. Orochimaru rattled on as if he was covering the weather, but Danzo didn't care as long as there was no way for him to be traced to the deaths. If only a single eye remained in her head, the Hokage will become suspicious, Orochimaru. Danzo said that as if he was warning the Sannin. Oh, how touched I am to know you are worrying about me, Danzo. The Sannin turned his back and started to walk into the darkness. But the Hokage's attention is something I want. He, of course, cannot allow the killing of his clan to go unpunished. The voice lingered on until that snake's presence could no longer be felt. With the snake gone, many of the root nin steadied but remained vigilant. But Danzo never steadied. He never became lax, and he was planning on any blowback for the death of an Uchiha and her missing eye. The fifth Hokage sat at his desk gloomily, looking over the stacks of paperwork strewn over his desk. Fugaku thought that he had plenty of paperwork as the leader of the Uchiha clan, but he was wrong. Truth be told, he was now somewhat envious of Minato's paperwork skills now. The man had always seemed to have finished his work on time and even stopped by the Uchiha compound every now and then. If only he knew Minato's secret. But even so, today had been good. No extreme paperwork from bad missions, and best of all, no pranks from Naruto. No matter how much he told Naruto to stop pranking, the boy never did, and even though he said he disliked his pranks, they always brightened his day whenever he wasn't on the receiving end of one. The day when Naruto had drawn hot pink Sharingan on his eyelids while he slept was a rather interesting day. See the Usagi calm. Sasuke spit his cereal across the bench and Naruto, rolling on the ground holding his sides, gave it away though. Being permanent marker and already late for work, he had no choice but to go with the absurd drawings on him. For most of the day, he had been able to keep it hidden by not blinking or covering his eyes covertly. But when he heard a report that Naruto had painted the Academy 3 different shades of neon orange, his concentration slipped. Only realizing his mistake when the 3 Umbu guard in his office fell from the room laughing. But a reminder that Naruto had put super glue in their masks on not that long ago had the desired effect of shutting them up. Thinking back on this, he smiled. Oh, Naruto, you certainly have your mother's sense of humor. But with the sudden entrance of Captain Wraith drew his attention. Captain, what brings you here? He asked evenly, but already knowing something was off. Lord Hokage, the 6-man squad led by Soken Hyuga has been found. The top Umbu's voice was low. Fugaku had been concerned for the team. It had been a high A-rank mission with 5 Chunin and Soken Hyuga as Jonin captain. A test for the young Chunin for a chance at promotion. Report. Fugaku raised his voice, but Wraith's head lowered. All squad members found were Kia. The bodies of all except Izumi Uchiha were found flayed and hung in trees on the northern border. The killing intent in the room was deadly, and even though Captain Wraith knew it wasn't directed at herself, it was unnerving. Izumi Uchiha's father had been Fugaku's closet friend while they were growing up, and with his death Fugaku had promised he would keep his best friend's daughter safe. Continue. The voice could freeze water. It appears the highly uncharacteristic wobble in Wraith's voice froze Fugaku. It appears whoever was after her paid close attention not to damage her face, while the evidence suggests she had destroyed her own right eye. Her left arm was heavily damaged from what looks to be an explosive tag detonation, so she gouged out her right eye with her only undamaged hand. But the evidence shows that her left eye was taken. After a quick medical assessment by myself, I strongly believe that her left eye was removed intact. With a bone-chilling snap, Fugaku's desk was split down the middle and sent into the walls. Summon Shursui and Itachi Uchiha to my office now. Without delay, all present Umbu scattered while seeing Fugaku's Sharingan blazing with anger. Fugaku had known Izumi since she was a toddler. Her mother had always wanted her to stay away from a shinobi life, but at the age of 11 she awakened her Sharingan. Her own chakra reserves were sizable, even for Uchiha. The young girl matched many male Uchiha members, but her clumsiness and rashness had kept her from an early promotion. She had proven her maturity and skill in her previous missions as of late. Fugaku slumped low into his chair. Oh no. Izumi, how will I tell your mother? Itachi and Shursui were calmly sitting at their favorite restaurant, although Shursui had been giving his best friend strange looks. Miss Mitarashi are not seeing each other, Shursui. He sighed only to see his friend's playful smirk. Crossing his arms was normally what Shursui would do when he wasn't convinced. Well, the way you two were talking and you did offer your dango, which is something I, Uchiha Shursui of the Uchiha clan, has never seen before. Said rather proudly, only to see Itachi roll his eyes. Shursui, she is a skilled kunoichi, a snake summoner, gifted intelligence gatherer and rather feared, he said, trying to sound as bored as possible. But Shursui wasn't fooled and a devilish smirk rolls across his face. You left out beautiful, sexy, smart, crazy and addicted to dango. He gave a fake sigh. Plus Itachi, you would be her mere boy toy. She is far older than you. Perhaps you like older women. Itachi nearly spat his drink out but hid it well as a cough. If you were to say that in front of her, you would find a dozen snakes in your bed, Shursui, Itachi deadpanned. But it only made him laugh. Aw, how cute, now you're sticking up for your new girlfriend, as he dodged a shuriken that whizzed past his ear. Just as the fight was about to escalate, Captain Wraith appeared before them. By direct orders of the Hokage, he wishes to see you, and it'll be clear. This isn't a mere request. The formidable Umbu captain eyed them off, and they were both well aware something was wrong. In an instant, all three were gone. The tension in the room was palpable. Itachi and Shursui stood at full attention with Fugaku sitting at his desk deep in thought. His eyes opened to show his Sharingan still ablaze. Izumi Uchiha has been killed in action along with the squad she was assigned to, the stoic Hokage stated. Itachi was shocked. He had known Izumi for many years and she was pushing mid-jonin level. Her unusual temperament had kept her from early promotion, but he knew she deserved it. But on the other hand, Shursui was near homicidal. Izumi had grown up with him. They had passed the academy together, shared each other's dream and hopes. But now she was gone. Shursui slammed his hands on the Hokage's new desk with enough force to leave handprints in it. What the fuck happened? It was a simple search and destroy mission, he yelled at Fugaku, but the Hokage wouldn't allow his own temper to flare again. Shursui, please. Losing yourself like this would not honor her memory. Captain Wraith will explain. The captain was the first Umbu to locate her team, he said coolly as the captain met the furious Uchiha's gaze. Shursui, my investigation into the battle scene held a very similar MO to a group of missing nin and samurai that have made a base of operations at the foothills of the southern mountains in the Land of Iron. Wraith cleared her throat before continuing. Each of the bodies except for Izumi's were found flayed and hung from trees that the northern samurai are synonymous for doing. But not only that, her eyes seemed to be a target, as they had avoided to damage her face during the battle. Shursui trembled with pent-up rage before preparing to put his fist through the wall, only to be stopped by the unwavering hand of the fifth Hokage. Pain may be a simple way to relieve anger, but the damage it may do to your body would hamper yourself while you lead the team tasked with annihilating this gang of killers. The young Uchiha blinked with surprise. You want me after them? He asked, only just above a whisper. Yes, was the ice-cool reply from Fugaku. You'll have all the recourses and men you require. The mission parameters are simple. find them and annihilate them. Any methods, tactics, and level of force will be used without hesitation. Now this reaction is not only because of an Uchiha's death, but Soken Hyuga was killed as well, along with 4 other fine chunin that served this village until the end. Fugaku let go of Shirsue's wrist as he moved to sit down again. I will be meeting with Hayashi Hyuga tonight, although the original meaning of the meeting was to discuss the futures of our clans. I presume he will be obligated to pressure for a main branch family member to accompany you to also regain the honor lost with Soken Hyuga's death. For the 3 stunned listeners in the room, each could not believe what they were hearing. Shirsue for being allowed the task of leading the team to end the killing spree of these vile killers. Itachi for the coldness of his father's voice. Itachi may have read of his father's bloodthirstiness, but to see it materialize in front of him showed that his father was as dangerous as he had been led to believe. While Wraith could not see the logic in the choice of team leader. The pros and cons of having Shirsue were oblivious. His tremendous skill in battle was undisputed, and the addition of a Hyuga clan member helped the long-range abilities of the whole team. But it was clear, even to a genin, that Shirsue was unhinged at this point, and being confronted with leading the team to find the killers could end badly if his emotions got the better of him. Hokage-sama, although Shirsue is powerful, I believe that his emotional attachment to one of the victims may affect his decision-making in the field. But with her statement, a burst of killing intent that would make even a battle-hardened shinobi tense, she didn't react outwardly, although inwardly was different. How fucking dare you? Shirsue turned. Blood dripped from his eyes. Wraith, meeting the gaze of the now enraged Uchiha, now involuntarily stepped back. How fucking dare you? Shirsue roared again, but only to see Fugaku in his way again with his own Manjikyu Sharingan blazing. Shirsue, stand down now before I stand you down myself, Fugaku ordered without an ounce of hesitation. The younger man's eyes widened, knowing it wasn't a mere jest, and with visible effort, he calmed himself only to fall to his knees, covering his eyes. Shirsue. Itachi rushed to his friend's side, trying to piece together what had happened. Father. What is this? Itachi asked. This situation had him dumbfounded. Only now knowing of a Sharingan above that of his own. To put it simply, it shook his reality. Fugaku let out a long and heavy sigh. It was now early evening, and the day's ending had been a long one. As well as the fact he was meeting with Hayashi served only to complicate things. Captain, you are excused for the rest of this evening, but my decision is final. Turning back to his son. Itachi, help Shirsue to our home. I will meet you there soon enough to explain this turn of events. Fugaku's tone didn't leave any room for leeway as Itachi helped Shirsue to his feet and slowly walked out. An instant later, Fugaku was gone as well. He wanted answers from someone he trusted, and there was only one place to find him at this late hour. Bathhouse. Even though he had his Sharingan activated, the perverted giggles coming from the bamboo wall gave the old man away. He coughed. Jiraiya, this behavior is unbecoming of some of your prestige. He deadpanned, but a perverted giggle was all he got in reply. Oh, come now, Fugaku, I'm only researching, and by the way, here's your advanced copy. Jiraiya tossed a little orange covered over his shoulder, which quickly found its way into Fugaku's back pocket. Ahem, Jiraiya. The sudden tone change got Jiraiya's attention, and with a blink the old man's eyes went from playful buffoon to hardened killer. A team sent over the northern border into Iron where found flayed. Even though we have a group of suspects, I'd like you to look into it just to make sure. Jiraiya, in all respects, was a curious man. His hobbies proved that, but his interest was piqued. Any unknowns you may believe that could be involved? Fugaku turned. I do not work in accusations, nor do I believe in rumors. But someone is behind this, and with the power at his disposal, firing an accusation without proof would lead to civil war. So be delicate. Understood. A simple but dangerous nod was all the confirmation he needed, and with that matter settled, Fugaku was gone. Arriving back in the Uchiha compound, Itachi's head was spinning. Although he was a Sharingan master and he had delved into the lore of the Sharingan, but this was something that his father seemingly expected, and to think that his father had withheld this information unsettled him. another level to the Sharingan, and that the information was withheld from him. He was the heir to the Uchiha, a decorated Umbu captain, one of the most skilled members to be born since his own father, and the fact that it was his own father that withheld it from him. It was tearing him up. He had made it to his father's study. Laying Shui down on a large couch, he paced in front of his father's desk, soon to be his own desk. How, what, and why? Those very questions echoed in his head over and over. Itachi, as so caught up in his own thoughts, he heard his father before he sensed him. "Father?" he asked nervously. His best friend had lost a lot of chakra due to the awakening, enough for Shiusi to be pushed to exhaustion. With a raised hand from his father, Itachi fell into silence. "Itachi, Shui, I apologize for not telling you both about this phenomenon earlier." Now Fugaku started to pace back and forth across the room, trying to find the right words. "As heir to the Uchiha clan and as one of our strongest members in history, you both deserved to know about this. But this is a SS rank secret of the Uchiha, and as such only a handful, even inside the Uchiha clan, have ever known of it." Fugaku sighed. He had the undivided attention of both Itachi and Shui. "The Sharingan that Shui has awoken is the next evolution of our clan's dojutsu. The Manjikyu Sharingan can only be awoken when great emotional pain is felt. Shui obviously had far stronger feelings for Izumi than I thought." Shui's head dipped, not meeting the eyes of his best friend and leader. His secret love with Izumi had been forbidden by both his own parents and her own. But once she had become a jonin, her place within the clan would allow her to be openly in a relationship with someone of his own standing within the clan. Without any comment from Shui, Fugaku continued. "My own Manjikyu was awakened when my best friend sacrificed himself during the Third Shinobi World War to save me. At the cost of something most precious to us, the Manjikyu is awakened, but also at the price of a piece of your soul that you can never regain," Fugaku said solemnly. Itachi stood, simply dumbfounded. This wasn't just his clan. It was his own eyes, and he would never have thought in his wildest dreams that his reality wasn't just a little from what he had thought but miles away from what he knew. Scared him. He was petrified. The look in his best friend's eyes brought a fear to him that he had never known, and a power was brought into his light that he would never desire. A power that he would never pursue, and above all else, never allow to take hold of his own soul. He would keep those precious to him safe, even if it meant protecting the whole village. Fugaku stood silently. Both Itachi and Shui had not spoken a word since he finished, but the fire that had been lit in his son's eyes made him both proud and worried for the future. Shui, on the other hand, was an open book. The young man's body language showed he was in great pain, even though he tried his best to hide it. "Shui, I will aid in teaching you to use this new power of yours. This I swear on my life." Fugaku mentally prepared himself for any questions both Shui and Itachi had. "Why did you hide this from us? I am your heir, and Shui is the third strongest member of the clan. We had a right to know." Walking to his oldest son, Fugaku rested his hand on his shoulder. "I should have told Itachi. I should have had more trust in the both of you. But while I was planning on telling you both once Itachi became the clan head, I now see that was far too late." Fugaku's eyes meet Itachi's. "Son, I beg your forgiveness for my keeping of this information. But as I said, this is a SS rank secret of the Uchiha. And Shui is the only living member bar myself who holds it, and the power that comes with those eyes comes at another cost. Blindness. So what you're saying is that it's a double-edged sword." Shizu's words were spoken softly, but both heard it loud and clear. "Sadly, it is Shui. I have used mine extremely sparingly, but my eyesight has deteriorated over the years. I was a young man in my prime when mine was awakened, and I was the same age you were when I awakened it. The Manjikyu Sharingan is closer to a Kenjutsu than anything else, so I strongly advise you don't use it unless in a life-and-death situation." Taken back slightly by the risks and dangers of the Manjikyu, Shui shrunk back into himself while mumbling for Itachi to help him to his feet. While Itachi helped Shui back to his feet, Fugaku decided to give the one last piece of advice. "This is the blessing and the curse of the Sharingan. As much as we, the Uchiha, revere the Sharingan, it also our undoing. So be careful in the coming days, and this secret stays within this room. Understand? Both young men nodded, but Fugaku sighed as he sensed another Uchiha at the door. As he walked to the door, Inabi Uchiha was waiting on the other side. Rest well tonight, the both of you. I'll be taking you both of active duty for the next 4 days, allowing you time to mourn and come to terms on what has transpired. Once Itachi and Shursui left the room, Inabi entered, dropping to his knees slightly out of breath. Lord Fugaku, Haishir has arrived, but the Sandaime Hokage has arrived alongside the Hyuga. Although the young Uchiha's tone for addressing two of the most respected men in the village left a lot to be desired, he nodded and set off for the meeting. Walking with Inabi at his back, Fugaku pondered. Lord Third with Lord Hayashi as well. A sudden change in plan isn't ordinary of Hayashi, perhaps to allow extra leverage for Soken Hyuga's revenge. Sliding the door open, he found both the Sandaime and Hayashi drinking tea quietly. With a curt nod to Inabi, he closed the door behind him while he sat opposite his two guests. Relaxing and taking a quick breath, he spoke, Lord Hayashi. Lord Third, I welcome you both to my house. He spoke with all the grace of a seasoned politician. Although I am somewhat surprised at your arrival, Lord Third. Hayashi had not informed me you would be accompanying him. If I had known, I wouldn't have been late and set out more lavish room. A warm smile graced the old Hokage's lips. I had not expected to come until very late this afternoon, Lord Fifth. What was supposed to be a quick meeting between both myself and Hayashi took far longer than we both anticipated. But I assure you all pleasantries were more than enough. I enjoyed my quiet cup of tea with Hayashi. Shifting his gaze from Hiruzen to Hayashi, he met the white eyes of his opposite clan leader. Hayashi was not a naturally cold man. The man had been a close friend of Minato, and in his youth he had met Hayashi quite frequently. But with the loss of Minato and his own wife, Hayashi's surface had hardened. Even his eyes seemed to have lost some of their light. Bowing slightly before his Hokage, Hayashi spoke. My apologies. I would have informed you of the company I was bringing, but a simple meeting between Hiruzen and myself became far more complex, and the tragedy that occurred only served to complicate it more. Taking a quick breath, Hayashi composed himself. First of all, I'm saddened by the loss of one of your clansmen, as well as the loss of Soken Hyuga and the other Chunin participating in the mission. An understanding nod from Fugaku, and he continued. With both an Uchiha and a Hyuga dying in this mission, it is a great dishonor laid upon the village, and I would already believe you have a mission planned for eliminating the criminals responsible. But I would ask you, clan head to clan head, that a high-ranking Hyuga of the main branch family be allowed to participate in the ending of this group. Fugaku returned with a nod. As a clan head and someone who was close to a person lost in the mission, I understand the pain of the Hyuga clan. While I have already set plans into motion for the ending of this group, I am more than happy to accept any member of the Hyuga clan to take part in the mission to satisfy the lost honor of the Hyuga. Bowing again before his Hokage again, this time far deeper than the first, he thanked Fugaku. But Hayashi soon raised his head to meet the eyes of the Hokage once more. Now, Lord Fifth, upon the original purpose of this meeting, I had said it was in the interest of both our clans for you to hear this out. Now you already know of the Hyuga's caged bird seal, and the reason why its use is in effect within the Hyuga. Hayashi paused, trying to find the right words without offending his Hokage. My own clan operates far differently from yours, Lord Fugaku, so as one of my daughters rise to become the leader of the clan, the other shall be given the caged bird seal. Pausing to rein in his temper, Haishir was pained to continue. I love my daughters just as I know that you love your sons, and my wife pleaded to me with her final breaths to make sure neither of my girls received the caged bird seal. Hiruzen coughed as he took over speaking. That is partly where my clan can help. Although Hayashi's oldest daughter is first in line, his second daughter appears to be far more powerful than her elder sister. Both Hanabi and my grandson Konohamaru are close friends and rivals, and with my blessing I have agreed to arrangement of a wedding between them once they are of age. That final comment shocked Fugaku. With the Sarabobi and Hyuga clans united with marriage, it would make them the most powerful clans in the Leaf. But realizing that with them both telling him, Hayashi and Hiruzen were not planning on a power struggle in the future. If so, why reveal the strongest hand to the person with the most to gain from the information? So he sat quietly as Hayashi spoke on. Now Hayashi spoke freely. With my youngest daughter wedding the grandson of the third Hokage, that prevents the clan elders from sealing her fate within the clan, as it would be seen as a lack of faith in the power of the Sarutobi clan to keep Hinabi safe and therefore would prevent any from attempting to seal her. Sighing heavily, Hayashi forced himself to continue. But as for my eldest daughter, Hinata, it sadly appears to be less adept at mastering the clan's techniques. She has the kind and gentle personality of her mother, as for which I love her with all my heart. But her flame does not seem to burn with the intensity needed by a clan leader. Along with the fact that the clan elders see it as weakness, they would not allow her to take full control of the clan without a fight for succession. Hayashi dipped his head in shame. It was an insult to his wife and her memory to portray their eldest daughter in such a light, but the truths of the world could not be kept hidden forever, and if not dealt with now, these problems could spiral out of control in the coming years of her adolescence. Fugaku ran his hand through his graying hair, thinking deeply on the information given to him by Hayashi. A civil war within the Hyuga, it would cost lives and weaken the integrity of the leaf itself, putting not only the village's safety at risk but could also risk an invasion from another village for seeing the leaf weakened by such inner turmoil. He thought to himself, carefully considering his options. But saying Hayashi's eyes raise up with a fire within them that he had not seen in years showed that he had come to a possible solution. But if I may, Hokage-sama, if she were to be married to a skilled and powerful shinobi that also had a powerful clan as his side, the problems would be resolved. If Hinata wasn't to become the clan head, the elders of the clan wouldn't dare seal her in fear of the repercussion from her husband's family for not believing them capable of protecting her. Fugaku had come to the same conclusion as counterpart and thought upon it. It would have to be one of the major clans of the Leaf. The Hyuga would never allow their own dojutsu to leave the village. Perhaps the Inuzuka clan or maybe even the Nara. Both of those clans' techniques could benefit from the addition of the Byakugan in their bloodline. But the next statement from his counterpart was an offer he could never have predicted. What I am suggesting, Lord Fugaku, would be as momentous as when Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha uniting their clans and forming the Hidden Leaf Village. What I proposing is a marriage pact between my eldest daughter Hinata and your own youngest son Sasuke. Fugaku's meeting with the Hokage and Hayashi is taking a while. Mikito thought to herself as she was cleaning the dining room table. Mikito was a seasoned jonin, so when Itachi arrived at the table silent as a statue, she was immediately worried. The Umbu hand seals code he gave to her worried her even more. Father will tell you later. It wasn't like her oldest son to be this retracted while with family. Even Naruto's antics couldn't get a rise out of him. But at least Naruto and Sasuke seemed to have had a normal day. All but the ghost of a bruise around his eye, he seemed in high spirits. Naruto's antics had involved the Uchiha clan since he could walk. To him, the compound was a safe haven from outside. Despite Fugaku's law, most in the village either looked to him with fear or hate. But the Uchiha were surprising quick to adopt him into the clan. It had been his 5th birthday when Sasuke and Itachi had shown Naruto that neon orange jacket of his. Getting the simple present from his big brothers nearly made the young boy weep. But when he noticed the Uchiha crests on his shoulders, Naruto couldn't help but cry. It was a week later when a villager openly threatened Naruto for smearing the Uchiha clan's noble crest. But the pair of patrolling police soon taught the man that Naruto was an honorary Uchiha and would be defended tooth and nail by any other clan member. After that day, no one dared attack Naruto, and after that Naruto truly saw the Uchiha in a different light. He saw them as family, he saw them shielding him, and all he wanted to do after that was shield them back from any danger just as they had done for him. So from there on out, Naruto promised to protect the Uchiha and the rest of the village. Even those who didn't like him. He promised he would be the shield for the whole village by becoming the Hokage just like his adoptive dad, Fugaku. Once Naruto had started his training and joined the academy, his work ethic rose as well. He wasn't as book smart as Itachi or Sasuke, but he tried his best. His rivalry with Sasuke and the with Naruto running around the compound for so many years, it had lightened up the Uchiha as well. Many couldn't believe the Uchiha sense of self-importance was steadily becoming more reasonable. But when Naruto was 7, he had come home and asked Fugaku why he healed so quickly from cuts, scraps, and bruises. At school, he never wore band-aids or bandages. Luckily for them both, they had planned for questions like that for years, and a quick answer that it was an enhanced healing trait that he shared with his mother quickly solved the riddle for the young blonde. But lately his questions had grown sharper, such as when he asked about the higher degree of hearing and smell he could pick up on compared to Sasuke and the other children. Although they had thoroughly planned for these questions and even revealing his mother's identity to him at the age of 10, they couldn't risk telling Naruto about the Nine Tails or his father. It pained Mikito for lying to the son of her own best friend and squad mate, just as much as it pained Fugaku to lie to the son of his best friend. Kushina and Minato had been good friends to the both of them. Kushina had even been Mikito's bridesmaid at her wedding to Fugaku. It seemed so long ago, when a young red-headed woman and a shy black-haired girl ran about the village playing pranks on people. Oh, how they missed the old days. She was overjoyed when her best friend had agreed to be her bridesmaid despite the fact she had a deep-seated dislike of Fugaku, always saying he was trying to steal her best friend away. If it wasn't for Minato as her secret boyfriend, it wouldn't have surprised her if she challenged Fugu to a fight. Luckily, Minato's calmer mind prevailed and kept her from open outbursts. While on the day of her wedding, not even Minato could stop her from wearing a black funeral dress rather than the bridesmaid dress that Mikito had picked out. But it boiled over when Kushina had called Fugaku Fugu Face at the after-party. Even though Fugaku had the patience of Kami himself, she could see her new husband was at his limits. In that case, Mikito had to put her foot down, and although she was being serious, it looked more as if a parent was scolding their child for doing something wrong. Thinking back on these old memories brought a smile to her face, a true smile and a warm one, but with the entrance of her husband it dropped. She could see the indecision written on his face. Before she realized it herself, she had a chair placed behind him so he could relax a little. As Fugaku sat, a long sigh followed. Tough day. It was all Mikito could ask. With everything that had happened in the last 24 hours, she knew that times were crazy for her husband, so she would let him explain at his own pace. But Fugaku could only rub his forehead, trying to make sense of it all. How could all of this happen so quickly? It was all he could ask himself. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, he leaned back in his chair, meeting the worried eyes of his one and only love. Izumi was found dead, and in his grief Shursui awakened his Manjikyu Sharingan. He knew it would shock her, but there was only one way to say it. He knew his wife was a shinobi, but it even shocked himself how frank he was being with her. Mikito closed her eyes and spoke a silent prayer for the fellow clan member. They were after her eyes, weren't they? It wasn't a question, merely a statement. With a nod, he confirmed her worst fear. Having the Sharingan elevated members within the clan and instantly made them higher-ranking clansmen. Their red and white crest was known across the shinobi world, along with the red eyes of the most elite of their clan led them to fame. But that fame came with a heavy price. Uchiha were renowned as well as feared for the fact that they never surrendered if outnumbered and faced with death. Most chose to die a hero's death, taking as many enemies with them as they could. But if a heroic death was unobtainable, they were either expected to destroy their own eyes in battle or be sure their body wasn't recoverable, for every shinobi's body held secrets. This blasted Sharingan, a blessing and curse for our clan, she told herself. But this next statement from Fugaku shook her to her core. Hayashi offered a marriage between his eldest daughter Hinata and Sasuke. Apparently Hinata may face a fight for succession if she isn't powerful enough by the time she inherits the Hyuga clan. Mikito stood motionless. In all of recorded history, this had never been done. The mixing of Uchiha and Hyuga blood had never been attempted, but with a voice as silent as the grave. Did you accept? Those 3 words were like kunais going through Fugaku's heart. I had to. There was no other choice in that matter. For once in a very long time, Mikito's anger got the better of her. What? How could you accept? We agreed that both Itachi and Sasuke would be free to make whatever choice they made, without clan interference. Fugaku sat still as Mikito paced back and forth behind him as she finished her rant. He thought back to when he was a young man that was promised to Mikito. He hadn't been in favor of the match, mostly of how it pained Mikito for be tied to someone she barely knew. But after he grew to know her, he soon loved her with all his heart. But on the day of Sasuke's birth, they had promised that both boys would be free to make their own choices in life. But that promise was unraveling before his eyes. I can't change it now. Hayashi and myself have formally agreed to it, and the third Hokage was a witness to it. If I was to back out now, I would lose face to the Hyuga. Fugaku expected yelling, but he got nothing but a choked sob, then a forceful slap to the back of his head. You would betray a promise to me and force your own son into a marriage just to save face. Yelling at her husband nearly hysterically. Standing up to be eye to eye with his wife, Fugaku raised his voice at her for the first time for as long as she could remember. This marriage wasn't for power. This marriage was about keeping innocent children safe. Mikito. Hayashi was forced into a corner with his clan elders. Together they have more power than him, and as a last ditch, he was willing to give up his own daughters to the two most powerful clans in the Leaf in order to protect them. In Fugaku's rage, he hadn't noticed Mikito had taken a few steps back while Itachi was standing at the door tensing in case of danger. It was only then he realized his Sharingan had activated on its own. Covering his eyes, he dropped to his knees. I'm so sorry, my love. I lost myself for a moment. Taking that faithful step forward, Mikito rested her hand on Fugaku's head. No, my love. You have nothing to apologize for. You are doing the right thing by protecting her. But Sasuke would want to know the whole truth, she said softly. With this, Itachi stepped forward. I agree with your judgment, father. Protecting the Hyuga girl would mean power, but keeping her safe is the right thing to do in the long run. I also cast a sound-canceling genjutsu around Sasuke's and Naruto's room. They will have heard none of this. Mikito breathed a sigh of relief. If Sasuke or Naruto had have heard any of that, it would have become far more complicated. Thank you, Itachi. How much did you hear? Enough. But I see the advantage of Lord Hayashi's deal. But whether or not Sasuke would willing agree to the proposal should be up to him, and any decision he makes I will support. As Mother said, you promised us both we would be able to choose who we would marry, without any interference from the clan. What if Sasuke does not wish to go ahead with the marriage? He is rightly allowed his own say in the events of his life. Itachi asked with an almost dangerous tone. If he was to reject it, he would have formally rejected it in front of Hayashi and Hinata in person. But he would be putting the future of the entire Hyuga clan at risk. If a power struggle was to come about due to Hinata's ascension with a weak power base, it would lead to death and perhaps a Hyuga civil war. Fugaku replied just as dangerously. Mikito stood slapping both her husband and her son across the head. Both of you. That's enough. Bending down to meet Itachi's eyes. You are right, and Sasuke will get to make his own decision about his future. Turning sharply to meet Fugaku's eyes. You married our son away without asking myself or him, and all the while we had told him he would be free to make his own choices. If he was to reject the marriage, he would be well within his right to do so, which is why you will be the one to tell him, and if he rejects it, you will have to be the one to convince him. As she began to walk out, Itachi stood suddenly. You are going to agree to this, mother? Turning to face her son with tear running down her cheek. Although your father did this without consulting myself or anyone else in the clan, his reasoning was correct, and he has the authority to do so. I will not like this decision, but I will not hinder it. As his mother walked from the room, he turned to glare daggers at his father, but seeing him staring down as tears dropped to the floor, he couldn't help but feel terrible. Itachi, please, do not tell Sasuke of this. I will tell him myself when the time is right. Crossing his arms, Itachi began to walk away, but giving one final piece of advice. It will not only be Sasuke you have to tell personally. Naruto will want to know as well, and his reaction most defiantly not be favorable. You know him as well as I do. He believes everyone should be free to make their own choices in life. Just imagine what he will say when he finds out you decided Sasuke's future for him. Good night, Itachi, was the only response he gave as he body flicked out of the room. Mikito woke early, just as the sun broke the horizon, to find her husband not beside her. After the argument from the night before, she had never felt her husband come to bed. Now seeing his clean clothes at the foot of the bed made her more worried. Dressing quickly, she walked out of the room. Getting to the kitchen, she didn't smell any breakfast or tea. On Saturdays, Fugaku always made her bacon and eggs with tea, but this morning he had disappeared. Hearing Itachi walk into the kitchen, she turned with a worried look on her face. "Your father didn't come to bed last night and he isn't in the house. Did you say anything else to him after I left?" "Yes, mother, I did. I told him that it wouldn't just be Sasuke he would have to explain this to, but Naruto as well." He quickly turned the kettle on for his usual morning coffee, but this morning was anything but usual. Father promised Sasuke and Naruto he would train with them this morning. If he breaks that promise, I'll be having another word to him, he said flatly. "Don't worry, Itachi, he will be back soon." Mikito had never had a reason to be frightened of her son, but for the first time in her life Itachi was starting to scare her. "I know you're angry about your father keeping secrets from you and the promise he broke to Sasuke, but you have to understand he predicament's son. He is under great pressure as both clan head and the Hokage. Mother, I know the pressure he is under, but I can't forgive him for lying to me and breaking promises. Not until he regains my full trust." Just before she could respond, he grabbed his cup of coffee and body flicked out of the room for privacy, but arriving on the roof, he could see the orange coat that belonged to Naruto. He was sitting lotus-style while meditating in the morning sun. His interest was piqued. He didn't pick Naruto for one that enjoyed meditation while he himself did it every now and again. It was mostly after stressful missions to calm his mind. Walking slowly and standing beside his little brother, he watched Naruto's steady breathing while deep in thought. "I can smell your coffee, big bro." Itachi's mind clicked with Naruto's enhanced sense of smell. "To be able to do that without the use of chakra is quite the skill, little brother. It will certainly be of use once you join the regular forces," he said proudly, turning back with his bright grin and a victory sign. "Ha, I'll be the best ninja the village has ever seen." Itachi smiled beside his younger brother. "You will have to surpass me first, Naruto," he said rather cheekily. "So Itachi, where is Dad? I thought he was training with me and Sasuke this morning." Itachi sighed heavily and Naruto noticed. "He had a rough day yesterday, little brother, and has left early to work off some of his troubles." Naruto turned and shrugged. "Oh well, everyone has a bad day every now and again." He smiled again at his brother. "Even a Hokage." Nodding his head slowly, Itachi turned and looked down at the training courtyard. Well, if father does not arrive by the time Sasuke joins us, I will supervise your training this morning." He sat with his younger brother staring off into the village and upon the stone faces of the Hokage. "You wish your face was with them, don't you, little brother?" Resting his hand on Naruto's shoulder. "Dada Bayo, I know my face will be up the one day, along with Dad's." Naruto smiled, but Itachi tensed but knew he was only talking of Fugaku. "Well, little brother, you will have to wait until I resign from being Hokage until you can take on the role." He chuckled at the astonished face Naruto made at learning he wanted to be the Hokage. "Oh, that won't be for years. Well, once I'm strong enough, I'll challenge for the title." Finally, he felt his father body flick into the courtyard. "Well, we will both have to wait until his time as Hokage is up," pointing down at their father. But as soon as Itachi saw his father, he knew he was still upset from the night before, and the blood on his knuckles only served to prove the point. But before he could even register his father's gaze, the Hokage was already behind. Naruto turned sharply, but Itachi stayed, looking forward slightly in awe of his father's raw speed, close to that of Shirsue's and my own. "Hey Dad, your hands are bleeding," Naruto said, sound quite concerned. Fugaku just smiled, resting his hand on his son's head. "Don't worry, son. Just some light training to keep my edge. A Hokage has to be in top form, right, Naruto?" he said warmly, to which the blonde nodded. Naruto nodded again, but after soon found his comfortable spot on the roof watching the sun rise above the village with his family, oblivious to what had happened the night before, but which was the subject that weighed heavily on both of the Uchiha's minds. After a few minutes, Sasuke rushed out to join them, smiling up at his brothers and father before climbing up to join. Peace was soon shattered by the two younger boys beginning to argue, but Fugaku had already decided on their training. "Boys, shall we begin your training?" His voice was far steadier than the night before and carried an air of authority, but the nodding he got from both of his sons told him they were ready. "Good. Today's lesson will be on maneuvering on uneven terrain. As such, all of this morning's training will be carried out on rooftop. As shinobi, uneven terrain is standard for us, so you both need to practice. Your warm-up will be a race to the front gate of the Uchiha compound and back, then 5 sets off 15 push-ups, sit-ups and tuck jumps. Go!" With that, the young boys raced off neck and neck with each other, but once they were out of earshot, Fugaku spoke up without turning to Itachi. "Of last night's argument, I wish for you to not tell Sasuke or Naruto. I will tell them myself." Turning his back on his father, Itachi looked out towards the Leafs training ground just beyond the wall. "You have my word, father, but the whole truth should be told to Sasuke. He should know of the insatiability within the Hyuga before he decides." All he could do for his son now was nod, and in the blink of an eye Itachi was gone. Tachi walked slowly, listening to the wind blow through the trees. It normally brought peace to him, but on this occasion peace was the last thing nearing his mind. Thinking back to the night before and the stare down he had with father gave him goosebumps. To think he was nearly coming the blows with not only his father but one of the strongest ninja in the village. A battle between himself and Fugaku would probably lead to most of the Uchiha compound being set ablaze and leveled. Itachi knew he was strong, but whether or not he could defeat his father was never a question he had asked himself. Thinking over the circumstances before and after learning of the Manjikyu Sharingan. Without his father's use of the Manjikyu, he put himself at a roughly 60% chance of winning. True, Fugaku had experience and time on his side. The match would have been offset with Itachi's youth and tactical brilliance. But with the addition of the Manjikyu, the advantage he held quickly evaporated. With his highly limited knowledge of the workings and powers of Manjikyu made it a dangerous wild card. It would obviously increase the perception of the user far beyond the 3-Tomo Sharingan, but just how far it was above his own was yet unknown. "I could never fight him." Itachi shook his head to rid himself of those thoughts. But walking towards his favorite training ground, he felt a pair of chakra signatures, both of which were easily readable. Sensing that both had a slight level of chakra depletion, he was somewhat curious, and this particular training field was reserved for Umbu only. Walking to the edge of the training ground, the scorched earthen spikes and spears showed a rather furious battle took place. But looking around, he saw a lithe body of an Umbu sitting upon a small earth mound. The long purple hair and the cat mask on her waist instantly gave her away as Nico. But he knew her better as Yugao Yuzuki, a tremendously skilled sword user and a confident earth nature user. She was a highly skilled Umbu sword specialist that guarded his father during evening hours. She was also an Umbu personally requested by Kakashi to join his infamous Team Ro. She sat comfortably cleaning her sword, but the shredded Umbu armor laying at her side showed she had a rather extreme spar. Searching around for her opponent, guessing it would be her partner Hayate. But the only other person in the field was a bruised purple-haired woman laying spread eagle on her back, gasping for air. With a small smile to himself and a shake of the head, he continued on, knowing a conversation with the snake mistress could take any turn. 0000000. Yugao sat comfortably but with several sore points on her body. Despite the fact she was an experienced Umbu, Anko was a skilled opponent and made her work hard for each victory. The fact that Anko was 3 years older than herself would have thrown many off by seeing she was the stronger of the two, but she had joined the Umbu at 16, and it was her 5 years in the force that allowed her to face an opponent as dangerous as Anko. Catching a slightly off feeling behind her, she quickly turned to see a true legend of the Umbu standing behind her. How did he sneak up on me? The almost panicked tone in her mind was quickly crushed by the new respect she felt for the Umbu captain. Itachi Uchiha was as famous as they got in the force, even more famous than Kakashi Hatake, who happened to be her first captain, as well as the fact that he was inducted into the Umbu at 11, which made her own induction age seem trivial. "Good morning, Taicho." Please Yugao, as neither of us are on duty, I would prefer it if you called me Itachi. Removing some stray hair from her face, Yugao nodded with a warm smile. Sorry for tearing up the training ground this morning. Anko learnt a new technique that she thought would finally let her beat me. Looking around the scorched, destroyed training ground, then over at the still gasping Anko, he smiled softly. While it appears you still won, whatever it is, it seems rather destructive. Oh, destructive doesn't do it credit. It's an A-rank wind-style technique that shredded my umbu flak vest, she said with a slight undertone of fear in her voice and slightly wide eyes from Itachi. The umbu flak was as tough as ninja armor got. His own flak vest had saved his life a number of times, but even with direct hits from water and earth-nature ninjutsu, his vest was never that damaged. To think she's only been practicing on it for a month and a half. Wind style is one of the hardest elemental nature types to learn, and she has near mastered the wind blade jutsu in such a short time. Itachi could hear the pride in Yugao's voice. If Anko was to join the umbu, she would be a good candidate for Captain Bird's team. He's probably one of the best wind style users in the force. But his thoughts were cut off by hearing Anko slump over to one side.
Yuhao-ne.
She whined. I nearly had you. Couldn't you have just let me smash you back into the ground? Yugao shook her head at how childish Anko sounded. Come now, Anko. Wouldn't it have been too cheap for you to win by me letting you? A grumbled, yeah, whatever, smartapants, was all she got in return, but she sat up, still facing away from having a seriously childish temper tantrum. Cheap or not, Yugao-ne, I still shredded your vest, but you just had to be all fancy pants and get away from it, still pouting. Crossing his arms and shaking his head, Itachi finally spoke up so Anko could hear him. You should learn from every fight, Miss Anko, and a losing fight should teach you the most. It's what every good umbu knows. Isn't that right, Yugao? Anko snapped around and was fairly red at not even knowing Itachi was behind her during the whole conversation with her best friend, and with a double facepalm she fell back to the ground. Thanks for the heads up, Yugao-ne. Lifting her legs into the air before rocking back her body, she flipped to her feet, showing the effortless grace she had. Anko started to pace towards the pair. Well, if it isn't my new dango buddy, how are things going, Itachi? She said in a slightly embarrassed tone. But a dangerous look from Itachi was the exact opposite from what she was expecting. Internal clan affairs, Anko. It was why I was coming here to let off some steam. The dangerous aura coming from an umbu captain made both of the older women take a step back. Taking visible effort to rein in his temper, Itachi turned back to Yugao. Would you be still capable of a quick spar? I know you've already been in one this morning, but I'd prefer to have someone to help let off some steam. Plus, I'll limit myself to taijutsu so that the both of you will have the advantage. Well, I could still fight, but I'm not arrogant enough to think I could match you one-on-one, even with you only using taijutsu, so it would probably be best for my health if Anko joined in as well. Oh, a threesome you might call it. Anko's saucy tone and wink to Itachi was offset by Yugao's palm, hitting her face, and before Itachi could react beyond a dusting of pink on his cheeks, Yugao was standing over her friend, scolding her like she would a 12-year-old. Cough. Come on, ladies. I believe we were planning to fight, Itachi said without a care in the world, kicking at a stone in the ground. Just 1 second, Itachi, I've got to discipline the little one, she said, bopping Anko on the head a few times. Watching the pair argue and scuffle brought a genuine smile to him. But with the free moment, he bent forward, touching his toes effortlessly and doing general stretches to warm up. Oh, and Miss Anko, if either of you can draw blood, I'll pay for all the dango you can eat. This got an extremely feral grin from Anko and a more confident smile from Yugao, knowing of her friend's addiction to the sweet. 0000000. The wind blew across the three. Itachi stood loosely in his own modified version of the clan interception-style taijutsu form. Opposite from him, a mere 25 paces away, Yugao was set in a tense stance with her ninjato held vertical in the standard umbu form. In stark parallel to both of the umbu members, Anko stood simply with her hands at her hips with a kunai in each. Hey Yugao-ne, don't you think it's a bit unfair that we have weapons and he doesn't? Waving her right kunai in Itachi's general direction. But before Yugao could give a response, Itachi gave his own. Don't worry, I'll make use of your weapons once you're finished with them. Oh, and by the way, if I make eye contact with either of you, it will be all over. He finished with a deceptively level tone that put both women on edge. Finally getting serious, Anko dropped into her snake-style taijutsu stance alongside her friend. Any suggestions, Yugao-ne? Not daring on taking her eyes off Itachi with such high stakes. Whatever you do, don't fight him alone. He joined the Umbu at 11 and was a captain at 13. All we need to do is just scratch him. Her body was tense. Itachi had been her captain on several missions and she knew just how good he was. Bringing his hand up to cover a yawn. Come now, we don't have all day. With that it began. Both Anko and Yugao covered the 25 paces between themselves and Itachi in a second, crossing each other's paths in a high-level Umbu attack pattern, but Itachi was ready for it. With his Sharingan active, he could watch as the women closed the ground and Yugao's blade was mere inches from his face. Missing her first swing, she used her momentum to bring her sword in from the side in a killing arc. Even before she could brace for T-sword impact, a kunai was lifted from her weapons pouch and was in the captain's hand, blocking her full-strength sword blow. But before he could capitalize on the advantage, Anko was above them with both kunai screaming down straight for Itachi's eyes. Itachi deftly he grabbed Yugao's hand, bringing her blade mere inches from his face, placing it in the way of the projectiles, and with a kick into her side, her skirmish with the captain was broken. Anko descended another pair of kunai in hand. Using her twin snake Fang taijutsu, she tried desperately to land a blow, but no matter what he ducked and weaved. Focusing on not looking into his eyes was difficult for her. The eyes of a shinobi gave away the game, but she knew the Sharingan's reputation. But she wasn't a feared kunoichi for nothing. After a flurry of heated slashes from Anko, one of which removed several of the Uchiha's hairs, he saw an opening. Her leg was bent too far from overreaching, and with a simple kick into her exposed knee, she was not only down, but a swift chop was coming down with Itachi's hand. But with a show of skilled teamwork, the sudden body flick Yugao had used to get behind him, and the 33-inch ninjato through his chest brought him to a stop before disappearing in a flock of crows while coming back into existence in a tree a few dozen yards away high in the treetops. Not bad. I'm impressed with your teamwork. It takes a rather serious attack to force me to use that technique to escape, but with high stakes. But I thought I shouldn't take any chances with that sort of killing blow, he said somewhat proudly from his vantage point. While both women were certainly not on his level, they worked incredibly well with each other and were keeping him on his toes. But with both of his opponents frowning at him, he guessed they didn't believe him. Getting back to her feet, Anko was visibly shaken from the close-quarters combat she usually relished. Yugao-ne, does he have any weakness we can exploit here and now? There must be something we can use against him. The desperate tone of Anko's normally casual or playful voice caught Itachi off guard. He knew she was strong, but maybe this small showing of limited number of abilities put her more on edge than he thought. If you're worried, Miss Anko, we could call of the match. I wouldn't be shouting you or Miss Yugao Dango, but at least the both of you won't be hurt. But the fire in her eyes that was lit from that comment made him swallow. I'll never give up. It put Itachi on edge while reminding him of a certain blonde boy. In a second, 6 more Ankos joined the fray. Already one was zipping up the tree with a speed that widened Itachi's eyes. This first clone used the tree trunk of the branch he was on as a springboard to launch itself at him, while others used the trees surrounding him or jumping up from the ground. Within seconds they were all around him, along with the original Anko and Yugao. The first clone attempted a leg sweep, but instead of falling back or jumping up, Itachi held his ground till the last second before using a burst of speed to firmly plant his knee into the clone's face, turning it to vapor instantly, but with a pair of clones hot on his tail. Both clones engaged him simultaneously. He was surprised with how fluently they worked together. But as one overreached, he grabbed its wrist and, closing the distance before he out his fist through its chest, while through the smoke he was able to sweep the legs out from under the other as it toppled off the branch. But the predatory smirk it gave and not disappearing instantly brought dread to Itachi, as it was the real Anko holding onto his leg, with the pair of them now in free fall towards the ground. Rolling in mid-air to make sure she let go and didn't draw blood was first and foremost. Hitting the ground hard and off balance, his knees buckled, but again to his surprise and annoyance Anko landed deftly before being joined by her clones and Yugao, who had him cornered against the large tree trunk. "I had not expected you to craft such devious plan, Miss Anko, particularly with such little time to plan it." He stared straight ahead at the Anko he was pretty sure was the true Anko. But his surprise and Yugao's embarrassment, they all spoke at once. "Haha, foolish mortal, you have only just begun to see the true power of Mitarashi Anko," the group of Ankos roared. Well, perhaps I will have to make use of your weapons a touch earlier due to your unveiling of your true power," Itachi replied dryly. Yugao's sweat dropped. "Oh, just get a bloody room, you too." The chorus of profanity and abuse hurled at Yugao by the group of Ankos for that comment was nearly enough to make Itachi blush and stink into the ground without using an earth-style jutsu. But seeing his opening, he covered the distance with Yugao, and with a single lock of their eyes, she slipped into a genjutsu. Yugao's body stiffened before going limp and falling to her knees. Itachi caught her ninjato deftly in one hand while keeping her from hitting the ground with the other. "Miss Anko, despite the fact that this fight is not life or death, it should be carried with a certain degree of professionalism," mirroring Yugao's almost parental tone from earlier. He was particularly surprised at how easily they had all let their guards down. Even though this fight wasn't to the death, it was still incredibly dangerous to not take a fight at this level seriously. A pair of the clones face-palmed seeing their friend caught so easily, while the other frowned and growled at the black-haired man. But despite the seemingly losing situation, the Ankos did a good job of making sure the original wasn't discovered. "Well, true, but a friendly convo in the middle of a spar isn't against the rules, Itachi," one of the Ankos grumbled out. "Yeah, Uchiha. You can't place all the blame on us either, it was her fault," another cried out, while the childish insult now cemented the connection to Naruto in his mind. Perhaps they were both dropped as children, he idly thought to himself. "Well, anyway, Miss Anko, the game has now changed for your disadvantage. So how are you going to get out of this one?" Keeping his dry tone, but he was certainly curious on how or if she would recover from this setback. But with this combined response, he was set on edge. "Oh, just wait and see, Ichi," with all of them bringing up a half-ram seal. For a second he wondered if she had learnt his exploding clone jutsu. "Oh dear Kami, please no," as the train of thought of ruthlessly extinguished, but things went from bad to worse. Yugao popped out of existence. Simply vanished, poof, gone. "See you later," and the dumbfounded look on Itachi's face would have made Anko nearly wet herself if she wasn't being so serious about getting free dango. Itachi mentally face-palmed. "Oh dear, my wallet will be rather thin after this," before a pair of hands shot out of the ground, anchoring him to the forest floor. The grip on his ankles was like a vice, and seeing not just the original Anko but all of the Ankos charging in at him, there was nothing else to do now but admit defeat. To escape from this now would require techniques that would be unsuitable for common sparing. My exploding clone jutsu would probably get me killed if I used it on either of them, so they win. Plus, with all the back pay from S-rank missions, my bank account shouldn't be for bad off. Mentally sighing while the original Anko closed the gap, leaving a ghost of a slash on his right cheek. 00000. With Yugao now letting of his ankles, he watched her rise from the ground with an uncharacteristically sheepish blush. "Don't fret, Miss Yugao. Both you and Anko fought extremely well. I would have had to have resorted to deadly force to escape from your entrapment, so you have both done extremely well," he said, smiling. To Yugao's credit, she didn't react far beyond a slight bow and a rosy dusting on her cheeks from the praise from an Umbu elite. But Anko's celebration was a little more on the nose. Both Itachi and Yugao watched as she did cartwheels while singing, "We are the champions." Itachi just chuckled while shaking his head, but the purple-haired Umbu sweat dropped. "Well, it was quite the plan from the both of you. I'll openly admit that if that plan was executed in the field, I would not have seen it coming. Although I would have ended the fight far earlier. I don't like overly drawn-out fights, but this one between the both of you has opened my eyes a little." Itachi's no-nonsense tone was the praise of a lifetime in the Umbu for Yugao. Even Anko was a touch rosy from the praise, but she'd gut anyone who said she had a blush. "I was highly impressed on your use of the shadow clone jutsu, Miss Anko," To create a half-dozen clones is not easy feat. I myself can only create 30 before suffering adverse effects. Not a second after he finished though he was racked with a violent coughing fit. Not only to his own surprise but as well as Anko's. She was at his side with a worried look and outstretched arms making sure he didn't topple over. She wasn't holding him up but the steadying hand on his shoulder froze him. Turning his head even with the coughs coursing through his body she was next to him. Her hand on his shoulder and she looked worried. But as soon as her hand was there it was gone. What? Why did I do that? Taking a step back as Yugao stepped forward to check on her Umbu superior. Are you all right, Itachi? Racking through another fit of coughs, he nodded but neither were convinced. Captain, those coughs aren't normal. Were you injured seriously during our spar? She said as Itachi leant back up regaining his composure. I made sure the kunai I cut you with wasn't poisoned. That's a good thing at least. She said trailing off taking a few steps away. If you had have poisoned one of my commanders I would have hit you so hard Anko. Oh come on Yugaone, it would only be a tiny bit of poisoning, it wouldn't have killed him. Maybe put him into a coma but not killed him. Pouting childishly. Plus I'm surprised you fell for our little trap. How could you even think the real prim and proper Yugaone could say something like that? I will be fine ladies, it's just a slight cough I've been having trouble with for the last few days. It usually comes around after physical effort and again I'm not perfect so I wouldn't have seen the trap even in a real fight, he said monotone. Well, seeing as we haven't killed an Umbu captain yet today Yugaone, I think we should be treated to some dango. As the Anko started to skip off happily towards her favorite crippling addiction Itachi watched her. It seemed somewhat creepy to himself but he never considered himself a social genius anyway, but as soon as he looked away he noticed Yugao's gaze upon him. Don't worry Commander, she isn't quite as crazy as she seems. She's had a rough start in her life and not much brings her out of her crazy shell. You Uchiha Itachi, you certainly have made an impression on her quickly and I'm happy that you have. So I should probably get after her, so she doesn't put too much of dent in your wallet. 0000000. He watched Yugao body flicking away Itachi was left stunned in the training field before a familiar voice woke him from his pondering. Wow Itachi, you certainly work fast. Rolling his eyes Itachi turned away from the voice. Oh go jump off a cliff Shursui. You have no idea what you're talking about. I normally don't Itachi, but to see you loose like that I can't believe my best friend would throw away a win in such a fashion. Leaping down from high in the trees Shusui landed beside him in a crouch. I wasn't under any obligation to win Shursui, and there's the fact that deadly jutsu wouldn't have been fair for either of them. A deadly jutsu from me could kill them easily. In true battle you know I never lose. Chuckling Shursui patted his best friend on the back. Oh come now Itachi. Lying to me isn't something new, but I understand you reasoning. Taking a few steps forward Shusui straightened and became far more serious. I would have liked to spar with you but seeing as you are already winded I'll be on my way. Plus I still beat you sometimes. But I don't want to keep you from your date. Have a good day Itachi. With that Shursui was gone as well and Itachi was once again alone with his thoughts. Bah! It's too eerie to be thinking this deeply into things. Plus my own dango addiction needs some attention. Itachi body flicked away on his way to catch his two sparring partners. 000000000. The almost painful intake of breath was almost enough to make Sasuke vomit. For the first time in memory both he and Naruto were laid out gasping for air. To be fair, after the first warm-ups and spars both of them had asked their father to up the training but the level they were pushed to almost defied belief. I suggest you boys don't get too comfortable. This training session is the pre-workout warm-up for a standard jonin, so this is what you will both be looking forward to when you make that rank yourselves. The tone of his voice was almost chipper. But the stoic look on Fugaku's face would have fooled anyone else but the two boys laying on the roof tiles, but the ghost of a smirk tugging at his lips showed he was enjoying putting the boys through the tortuous session. Sitting up on his elbows Naruto looked more exhausted than Fugaku had ever seen him before. Does that mean that a Hokage's training is even harder? With only a slight nod Naruto had his answer. But he did something that both boys were not expecting. He sat with them looking over the village in the midday sun. But I assure you both that there are few, if any at your age, that could match the drive of you both now. I myself was not as strong as either of you while I was at the age you are both are now, and I'm more than happy to admit it. But it was only due to war, conflict, and a degree of luck that allowed me to reach the level that I am now. The sagely tone of his voice brought both Naruto and Sasuke to silence, knowing that their father grew up in a different time, where only skilled or very lucky young shinobi lived out their teens. So for Sasuke, it made him sick to his stomach to think of war and conflict in their own lifetimes would do to them and the people they knew. Sadly, although not unexpectedly, the thoughtful moment was broken.
Oi!
How the hell are you still alive, Sasuke? I've never seen you train as hard as me. Maybe 'cause I'm getting better than you, dope. Ah, typical smugness team. Just like all Yuke dash, the slap to the back of Naruto's head stopped him quick enough. You shouldn't finish that sentence inside the compound, Naruto. What if Mikito heard you? The young boy's paled look was all that Fugaku needed to see that the young blonde-haired son was sorry. I am quite surprised, though, with both of you acutely. It's good to see you pushing yourself more, Sasuke. To see you matching Naruto's endurance is impressive. Sasuke's eyes almost lit up with the praise, but Naruto's upturned nose got a reasonably hard punch in the chest. Shut it, dope. Fuck you, team. Fugaku shook his head. It was definitely these boys that were making his hair go gray. Watching them wrestle on the ground with near boundless energy from only a few minutes ago when both of them collapsed on the roof. Watching the boys brought a smile to his face. It seemed strange to him that ever since Naruto was around he smiled more. Watching Naruto, he could see the fire of his mother, and despite the fact that she annoyed him at times, she made him smile as well. After that night, it was hard for Fugaku to smile, not only losing a dear friend by taking on the role of Hokage after the disaster. It was a political minefield, and he wouldn't have lasted without the aid of Hiruzen. Thinking back to his first 6 months after taking the position on, he was genuinely surprised that he had held it all together. Infighting for power within the village had been his primary concern. It had mostly been Danzo making seemingly small power plays, such as requesting more funds or an increase of the number of orphans given to the foundation, although he was smart enough to see the game that devious old man was playing at. Luckily, with the third there with him, he could mostly play Danzo and the civilian side of council off, who were the old fool's personal lackeys. But it was the outer threats that had been the most trouble after those first months. Once IWA had learned of Minato's death, the elite spies that had been implanted into IWA had reported that many wanted to reignite the war. Truth be told, even he thought it was a smart plan. With Minato dead, there weren't any one-man armies left in the Leaf, and with causalities so high after the Nine Tails attack, IWA might have just been able to win. It wasn't until Fugaku had personally led a strike team to the border of IWA and slaughtered a 50-man group of shinobi mercenaries single-handedly. Before he walked directly to the official border crossing between IWA and Konoha to give a letter addressed to Inoki personally. The contents of the letter were never made public, but after that point the spies said that Inoki had entirely stopped entertaining any plans of going to war with the Leaf. Kumo was another powder keg, but after the failed Hyuga kidnapping they never attempted to spill blood against the Leaf. In that case, it was pressure from within the Hyuga clan that nearly caused war when a number of side branch members nearly attacked the team of diplomats as they left the village was as close as the Leaf had been to war in years. Although each man had said they had done it of their own free will, Fugaku guessed it had been the Hyuga elders who had forced them to do so. With so many years of hardship and trouble, Fugaku's smile had been rare. It had even rubbed off on Itachi, who didn't smile much for a boy at his age. Being a chunin at 10 wasn't something that many could say they had done, but the life of a shinobi took a toll on his oldest son. But the young blonde's first prank had been simple but extremely effective. Steal the shoes from all the door fronts to the Uchiha compound, paint them all neon orange, then leave them in a pile in the middle of the compound. Seeing over 150 pairs of shoes stacked up on his way to the office in the morning brought a long-awaited chuckle to Fugaku. It was a chuckle he had almost forgotten, a chuckle he had shared with Minato in their off hours. He loathed himself for the man he had become in those years, a cold man, a dark man, and almost a cruel man. War and devastation had taken its toll on him, but it was that little blonde boy with his rays of sunlight that had warmed his soul again, and he could never thank Naruto enough for bringing him back from the edge. 0000000. Boys! It was stern, nearing that of a command, but it had the desired effect, with both Naruto and Sasuke stopping. I am proud of you both on what you have accomplished. Naruto, could you please run inside and ask Mikito to put on her special green tea myself? You can also get changed. They'll just be having a talk with Sasuke here for a minute, okay?
Yeok, Dad.
With a well-practiced leap and a perfect landing, Naruto was quickly inside, whereas Sasuke looked up at his father curiously. The curious look soon became surprise as Fugaku sat down next to Sasuke. It had been a long time coming for a heart-to-heart with his son. You did well this morning, you're improving quickly. You'll make Chunin in no time once you leave the academy. Sasuke could only look down sheepishly from the praise. Thank you, father. But the somewhat dejected tone had him worried. Is something the matter, son? Fugaku wasn't a social expert, but he could read body language like a book. A heavy heart only weighs down a shinobi. A light heart keeps him quick. What is bothering you, Sasuke? My Sharingan, or lack thereof. Fugaku could only sigh at his son's dejected tone, but he knew this conversation was coming. Son, just because you haven't awakened it yet shouldn't worry you. Our clan's dojutsu is considered to be a blessing to whomever awakens it, but it can cause so much pain in your life. Resting his hand on his son's shoulder wasn't something he was planning on doing, nor did he want to scare Sasuke from what was likely his destiny, but his son deserved to know of the blood and death that went along with the Uchiha name. I watched my closest friend die with my own eyes, son. My Sharingan was active and watched as the hail of earth bullets rained down upon him. He paused to compose himself. That image is forever burnt into my mind. I will forever be haunted by the death of my friend, even though he did so to save my life. So tell me, Sasuke, how would you live with yourself if you watched Naruto or Itachi die to save you, while you remember each and every blow and strike upon them? Fugaku pushed himself up, but keeping a close eye on Sasuke, but it worried him that he hadn't lifted his head after telling him of his own dark past. I do not wish to scare you from your destiny, Sasuke, but the truths of this world must be known to you. But with a crouch he lowered himself to meet his son's eyes. Even now, in a time of peace, Uchiha are not completely safe. Izumi Uchiha was killed during a mission. He paused himself slightly before continuing. She was targeted for her eyes. It is why we Uchiha must stay vigilant and protect not only our eyes but all of our family at all times. Sasuke's eyes were wide with sorrow. Izumi had always been a friend to the younger children within the Uchiha clan. Her natural kindness, warmth, and mischievous nature made her a quick friend of Naruto's, and she was always happy to spend time with Sasuke despite him being an heir to the clan. Dropping his head into his arm, he bit back sobs. Does Naruto know? Seeing his son like his tore at Fugaku's heart, but it was the life of a ninja. Your mother will have told him inside. Both her and Naruto cared for her deeply, but I thought it best if I told you myself, son. His stern voice didn't portray him as overly mournful, but on the inside Fugaku was hurt deeply by the loss. He himself had ordered the mission that took her life, but every Hokage has had times such as these. She died as a proud leaf shinobi. But before he could finish that sentence, Sasuke was already of the roof and running. The sharp snap of a door being slammed shut told him Naruto was close behind him. Shaking his head, he knew that it was a poor choice of words. Whether or not she had died proudly wasn't the issue for Sasuke. It was the fact she had died which had set them both off. But with a slight gust of wind, he felt his wife beside him. Both of them handled it the same, it seems. A deep sigh from himself and silence from Mikito was all that followed. Be thankful, Fugaku. Both of them are well within their right to hate you at the minute. Not telling either of them that she was pushed to such extremes in her final moments will not end well. Mikito, please. She turned her back while interrupting him. Keeping secrets is part of your job, Fugaku. I understand that as well as you do. But keeping those secrets from you sons will never end well for either of us. Neither of them have any reason to trust us anymore, not even including the secrets we've kept from Naruto. Our secrets have kept him safe. He turned, but his wife didn't face him. We haven't even told him the full truth about his mother, and the rest of his life is a lie. His wife turned, glaring dagger at him. What kind of parents are we, husband? How bad are we for keeping this from Naruto? Isn't it bad enough he was orphaned mere hours after his birth? Isn't it fucking bad enough we have made a mockery of the memories of our dearest friends Fugaku? We are a fucking lie. This had been a long time coming. They had lied to Naruto every point during his life, only revealing his mother's identity due to an extreme event in which they couldn't lie their way out of. But hearing his beloved wife practically screaming at him for their 13 years of sin cut through him worse than any kunai. Minato and Kushina would under asterisk slap start. Don't dare finish that sentence. The glare and killing intent froze Fugaku. Mikito had given him slaps on the arm, even over the head like the night before, but this was the first time she had slapped him across the face. Kushina would be ashamed of how I've treated her son Fugaku. Every time I look at him, I see her face and I loathe myself for lying to him for his entire life. Now with the secrets we have kept from Itachi, even though he will succeed you as clan head and marrying Sasuke to the Hyuga girl. How could you, Fugaku? Because the man making these choices is not Fugaku of the Uchiha clan. The man making these decisions is the 5th Hokage, and as the 5th Hokage I must put the village first. You know that better than anyone. I've made sacrifices, same as you, husband. Don't ever forget that. The deadly edge with her final comment sent chill up his spine. Never in all their marriage had the rift between them been like this. Not even when she was promised to him was she this aggressive, but he knew her reasons and he couldn't fault them. She was protecting their children from the man he had to be to lead the village. There was no other option. 0000000. Sprinting from rooftop to rooftop would have felt almost effortless now, but the tears that still stung his eyes forced to be careful. Hearing of Izumine's death and hearing Sasuke running off, Naruto knew he had a job to do. Although Sasuke wasn't a brother by blood, he almost felt like a brother by soul. Ever since they were little, their connection was clear even to him, even through his thick head. So helping his brother was what he knew he had to do. Truth be told, he probably wouldn't have caught up to him over such a short distance if they hadn't both already been through a hellish training session. Sasuke was always the faster of the two, but being this spent allowed Naruto to gain ground quickly. Coming up quickly behind him, the usual approach would have to simply tackle him, but he would never consider it today. Looking ahead, he watched as Sasuke reached a wide road and simply stopped instead of jumping. Seeing Sasuke slump back sitting on the tiles made Naruto up his pace until he was just behind him. Hey Sasuke! It was flat and soft, only loud enough for only Sasuke to hear it. But a simple nod without a glance was all he got in return. Mom told me to. Yeah, I know. Mom told me they were after her. Sitting down next to Sasuke, he let out a deep sigh. They were after her eyes, Naruto. They targeted her and focused on her only because she was an Uchiha and the bloodline she held. Naruto looked over to Sasuke's only to see that his knuckles white from the force he was gripping with. Running his hands trough his hair, Naruto didn't really know what to say. It hurt that much now that she was gone, but Sasuke was her real family and he had more of a right to be vengeful. He was an Uchiha heir after all. Everyone in the clan says the Sharingan makes you strong. But that's bullshit. The thunk of a kunai hitting an exposed wooden truss on the opposite side of the street worried him a little, but the fact that it had penetrated up to the handle worried him more. It makes you complacent, it makes you think less, and it makes you an easy target. Once they have a way to be our eyes and Uchiha is dead. The Uchiha would be better off with no Sharingan whatsoever. A handful of shuriken embedded into the same truss with the familiar force. Sasuke had a narrowed look upon him now. Naruto, if I end up like Inabi, Yashiro, or any of the other stupid adults in the clan, make sure to beat some sense into me. The tone he set read loud and clear that he wasn't joking. Normally he would have been thrilled to beat up Sasuke, but today was different. Placing his hand on his brother's shoulder, he spoke softly again. I promise it, brother. 00000. Even at this distance, Fugaku could see the conviction in their eyes, He was quite a way back to make sure neither had seen him, but he wanted to make sure they were together at least. As long as those two worked together, there was nothing that could stop them. He leant back into the shadows as both boys got up and moved their way further into the village. Vaguely hearing ramen was enough to know that Naruto still himself, but listening to what Sasuke had to say about his own clan's men and the eyes he would soon unlock worried him. You're right about certain clan members though, son. I will give you that at least. He shook his head thinking of Inabi, Yashiro, and a number of his other clan's men. To this day it disappointed him how some inside his own clan treated people they had seen as outsiders. It was disrespectful at best and near traitorous at worst. They were all shinobi of the Leaf. No matter what clan you were from, you gave respect to all other Leaf nin. You didn't have to be friends. Respect was lacking trait in many of the members in his clan. As Naruto and Sasuke soon left his sight, he thought over how bad his clan had been before said blonde had become a part of it. Oh Naruto, I have no doubt this clan owes you the world, and as long as you have either your mother, myself, and your brothers, this clan will always back you. But an unmistakable presence moving up on him stiffened his composure. To her namesake, the captain had appeared behind him almost without him noticing, almost as if she was her code name incarnate, but there was a reason only the best ninja in the village got to wear the big hat. Good morning, Captain. Dropping to one knee, said Captain offered a scroll to her Hokage. Mission reports from the Foundation. He was not pleased when he handed these over. Wraith's monotone voice was seemingly more emotionless than normal. She clearly didn't care for the old man, nor did she care for his intentions. He is an elder of the village and is well within reason of deserving our respect, Captain. Whether or not he gets it is another matter entirely though. Glancing over these lower-rank mission reports, he could already see Danzo's pattern of misinformation and lies seemingly dripping off the scroll. Your secondary mission? That question had seemingly come from nowhere. I have the location of 5 root barracks along with a pair of underground training and marshalling points. At current evaluations, I believe Danzo may have as many as 300 shinobi at his disposal, but my instincts tell me he has far more. Her tone had a certain edge to it that made him slightly worried. The captain was rarely worried. Even facing an elite like Kakashi didn't faze her more than a quickened heart rate, but to see her openly nervous. Be cautious. Those 2 words made the Umbu commander raise her mask. They sounded almost fatherly to her. Hell, he was old enough to be her father, but she had always been close to her Hokage. She didn't train with him from the earliest age for nothing. She had fought beside him through years, jarring training sessions and deadly missions to be mere mediocre Umbu. She was the best. Having her sensei remind her to be cautious was all she needed to her, that she still had a special spot in his heart for her. It wasn't often she got a warm, fuzzy feeling these days. With a curt nod from him, she was quickly gone and Fugaku was left standing on the roof alone. Looking up to the monument, her could only sigh. Oh, where have these years gone, old friend? But there was little time for pondering such things. Over to the outer walls he restless. Perhaps a proper training session would help. Thinking it over, it was the best choice. He certainly wasn't doing paperwork on his day off, and his other bet was that Mikito needed time to cool down. So with a nod to himself, he was off. Character bios. Enko Mitarashi, 23 years old. No changes to outfit as it's already pretty damn cool, if only a little exposing. Changes will be made to her personal life, but those will be revealed in later chapters. Skilled special jonin with a mastery of fire nature ninjutsu along with a good grounding in wind nature ninjutsu, most of which she had learnt from her old master but has only now been able to use them fully after first mastering fire nature. Her skills in ninjutsu and taijutsu make her a formidable opponent but is held back by the sealed curse mark on her shoulder. Yugao Yuzuki, 21 years old. Either wears her Umbu armor or leaf jonin flak vest depending if she is on or off duty. Her main role is Hokage protection, mostly involves not being seen in his office and protects him while he is on the streets walking among the population. She is an extremely skilled Umbu, a master at Kenjutsu, along with high degrees of skill in Fuinjutsu and sensing. She was personally selected by the Hokage to become his guard after she was battle-tested in Kakashi's Team Ro. Was capable of making it into the Umbu at 17 along with being hand picked by Kakashi to be placed in Team Row after Itachi's promotion to Umbu captain. 00000. Very little had surprised Itachi recently, but today was an exception. Losing his spar against Yugao and Anko had surprised himself a little, but he had been a little overconfident by not allowing himself to not use jutsu. Thinking back over that decision could only shake his head at himself. Both of his opponents were highly skilled and Anko was far more deceptive than he had imagined. The other thing that had surprised was the assortment of looks that he and the other two women beside him were getting. Having Yugao on his left, she had the proud walk that all Umbu had, and even though she had hanged with a normal Jonin's attire on, she still demanded respect. Anko on his right was almost skipping down the street on her way to free Dango, and despite the fact that her attire left little to the imagination, she walked without a care in the world. Anko may have not have had a care in the world, but even she must have noticed some of the looks she received. Most of the younger women gave her rather dirty looks, not only for her choice of outfit but perhaps for being next to himself. Itachi knew of his good looks, and truth be told, he had not been in any sort of long-term relationship, but much to his relief his fangirl club had somewhat from existence after the start of his Umbu career. But some of the older civilians and even some of the older shinobi gave her judging looks, even a few looks bordering on disgust. He certainly knew of Anko's past. It was common knowledge of her apprenticeship to the snake Sannin. What concerned him most though but her personal file was marked top secret, so it was even out of the hands of Umbu captains such as himself. It wasn't common that a personal file was marked top secret. The only other personal file that he knew of that was top secret was Naruto's. But for all the things going through Itachi's mind and the fact that he now had to shout dango for someone that was more addicted to it than himself. But he was calm. That wasn't common for himself. As an Umbu captain he was always on alert, but standing with the two women beside him he felt at ease. But he felt as if he was betraying himself for being this calm for what has happened in the last few days. Before he could frown though, he was raised from his thoughts by a sing-song voice. Hee, I hope you have plenty of money, Itachi. I have only had dango once today. It's fine, Miss Anko, you just go ahead and pick out however much you want. Anko's eyes lit up brighter than Naruto's at the promise of free ramen. As the sweets shop came into view, Anko ran ahead with a skip in her step. You shouldn't enable her addiction like that, Itachi. The deadpan statement from his Umbu subordinate made him smile a little. There is little harm in this addiction though, Yugao, even though it is one of the 3 shinobi vices. I don't think you'll see it in such a fine light after she is finished and your wallet is empty. Between her chuckle and the noise that this market made, her ears were still sharp. Damn snake whore with the Uchiha air. A young civilian woman was just a touch too loud for her own good, and seeing Itachi's small smile drop the same instant told her that he had heard it as well. The street went dead silent. It normally would have been Yugao defending Anko's honor, but this time it was Itachi's own killing intent. The young purple-haired woman took a subconscious step back from the younger Umbu, and it wasn't just her. Many of the civilians in the street were caught off guard by the pressure in the air, and even the shinobi in the area were put off. Oi, Itachi. I have dango to eat and you have bills to pay, so get your arse up here. Snapped from the sudden loose of composure, Itachi was soon to correct himself, but the stare from Yugao and even from Anko down the street put him off slightly. But with a quick step he was on the way back down the street to the sweets shop. Before he knew it, Yugao was back at his side and Anko's head had ducked back around the corner. You don't have to say anything, Taikyo. A simple nod was all she got in return, but she could notice the young Umbu captain was a little on edge from the younger girl's comment. She gets a bad rap from her past. The failed attempt at small talk came out rather fast and awkwardly. Cursing herself in her head, she resigned not to bring it up again, but it seemed the Uchiha had different plans. I already know about her more public past. His tone was dry. I already know what someone's past can do to their present. Even in their own past was completely out of the person's control. It's something my father tries to help from his position. His tone grew sharper as his sentence finished, but Yugao already knew to the person of whom he was referring to. It's sad, Isen. Her sentence was cut off by Itachi raising his hand. Yes, it is sad, but both people of whom we are referring to are doing their best by sticking it to Kami above and not wallowing in their supposed fate. Itachi's eyes were hard as the tempered steel their own weapons were made from. Yugao hadn't seen him in this mood. Despite she had watched him at complete focus in the field, this was a different type of focus. This focus meant a painful death to anyone that hurt those that he cared about. Seeing her enemies falter and wilt under his gaze wasn't something she wanted to experience. As Itachi turned the corner and walked into the sweets shop, he could already see Anko sitting down with several sticks of dango, waiting for their inevitable demise, and a few sticks that had already been devoured. His focus mask had been dropped for a more friendly and relaxed public mask. Sometimes he wondered to himself if he had a split personality that came along with the ease of his personality changes. Sadly, he had resigned himself to believing it was just part of his life as a shinobi. "You could slow down a little, Miss Anko," he deadpanned. "How will you be able to eat your full with stomach cramps and indigestion?" The puzzled look Anko gave him was similar to that of an offending puppy or an offending Naruto, depending on the severity of the crime. But it stung a little to know he certainly wasn't a skilled conversationalist. "Don't worry, Ichi. Many years of hard work and dedication has allowed me to endure this dangerous and thankless job. But somebody has to do it." The first tick mark on his forehead was from the new nickname she obviously had picked for him, but the ease of which she rattled off her reasoning for her crippling habit had produced the second. But sadly, his brooding was interrupted. "Itachi, don't look so glum. I only just beat you." A smack from Yugao was quick to follow. "Ow ow. Well, okay. We only just beat you, so stop looking so glum. Hell, have some dango if you want." Anko half-heartedly pushed a plate of dango over to Itachi's side of the table. It surprised both women on how quickly all 3 sticks of dango disappeared. Anko raised an eyebrow. Who knows, Yugao? There might be an eat-off at the dango corral." Both of her sparring partners' sweet dropped at the cheesiness of the comment, and she scratched the back of her head in embarrassment. "Well, on that note, I'll get more dango." Anko was up in a flash ordering more sweets from the counter, but Itachi was sitting at his seat more than a little perplexed. All the things he had heard about the snake mistress and snake whore didn't hold up with the genuine article. Plenty had told him to be wary of her and of how crazy she was, but it didn't make a lot of sense. The opposition to the theory was that she was even still alive. If she was a traitor, she would have been killed on the spot, and she, if lied, Inoichi would have discovered her betrayal and then would have been put to the sword. Second was her seemed insane personality, and for what he had seen throughout the village, she could hardly be called crazy by any shinobi, without most of whom being called hypocrites. Most ninja developed extreme personalities due to the line of work they were in. Might Guys was a prime example. The next person would have been Tsunade Senju with her crippling gambling habit. It was common for most ninja to form some sort of habit to deal with their life. Reading porn in public and smoking were just some that he could name off the top of his head. Thinking about the hypocrisy of it, aren't you? It wasn't really a question, but he was somewhat disappointed in himself for being read so easily. "I've been so close to tearing my hair out that many times thinking over it, Itachi, but it never gets any easier. But I'll admit that it's getting better for her. When I first brought her back, it was far worse." How does she cope? He didn't want that question to sound pleading, but he guessed Yugao would understand. "Spite." Her voice was so cold and distant it truly scared Itachi. "She spites all those who thought she should be nothing or even dead. It's what keeps her going forward. So all those who have wronged her in her life only see her walking forward. It doesn't seem healthy." Itachi's voice was quiet and Yugao heard it loud and clear. "Our life is never healthy, despite the fact that we do it as our duty to the village, killing all those souls. It wears even the best of us down. Those who enter the shinobi world never come out of it innocent. You and I are perfect examples, Captain. We both entered the Umbu when we were young, although you have been in the force far longer than I have. Her personal file is top secret." Again it was quiet, but again Yugao heard it loud and clear. "Anko's past is hers and hers alone. Your father understood how much her past could affect her social life now and decided on the solution similar to that of your little brother's. So if she wants you to know, she'll tell you in her own time, Itachi." He nodded slowly. How could someone that tormented still even smile, let alone forge on? Staring in through the window, he saw the dirty looks directed at her back, but she looked as if she didn't have a care in the world. Just how strong you are, Anko, as he chuckled to himself. To his credit, he didn't flinch when she turned and met his gaze. Even the saucy wink got little more than a raised eyebrow, much to her chagrin. As Anko skipped towards the front door of the restaurant, Itachi turned only to see a knowing smile barely gracing Yugao's lips. Itachi could only shake his head. "So Ichi," said. Ichi refused to facepalm while all the other customers heard his new nickname, but he turned to Anko anyway. "Do you have any cool wind nature jutsu you could teach me? I've nearly mastered the wind blade jutsu, and I know that your fancy eyes can copy any jutsu they see, so you must have a few stored up." Itachi shook his head. "Sadly not, Anko. While I do know quite a number of wind nature jutsu, I can't hand them out. You'll be able to find most of them in the jutsu library, and the others you won't find there are S-ranked level wind nature kenjutsu." The faint sound of an old perverted man face falling off the roof shone a little light onto Anko's request for the young man. Despite all his genius, Itachi was more than a little socially inept. Luckily for him, Anko wasn't one to give up. "Oh, come on, Ichi-sama." Itachi was hard-pressed to stem the blood rushing to his nose as Anko leaned over the small table, showing off her assets extremely well along with eating her dango as suggestively as possible. Any normal man would have glazed over with the sudden rush of blood away from his brain, just as a certain white-haired man had done on the roof above them, but Itachi was always thinking ahead. With Anko carefully trying to show off enough cleavage without being arrested for public nudity, she had left the ever-so-precious dango undefended, so with one single swipe all available dango was carefully sitting in Itachi's lap with one stick already being devoured. The look of sheer betrayal made him smirk a little, and Yugao was hard-pressed on trying not to let out a chuckle. But with one carefully timed move, Anko's swipe for the dango proved useless, but at the same time she was practically laying on the table, giving Itachi an even better view of her assets. Getting a good view. Itachi mentally face-palmed, knowing he had been caught peeping like said certain old man currently on the roof would have been, but he resigned himself to whatever revenge she had in mind. But as his own onyx eyes met her dark hazel orbs, he wasn't sure what he was seeing in them, but it certainly wasn't anger or rage like he was expecting, but he couldn't place the emotion he saw in them. In this moment, it wasn't only Itachi who was frozen. Anko too was locked with the gaze of the young Uchiha. His Sharingan wasn't activated like it was before in their spar, and she couldn't help but stare. Strength but serenity, power but restraint. The exact opposite of him. Despite the fact she wanted to frown thinking of her own sensei, she couldn't bring herself to, but the little moment between them was soon to be ruined. "Hey, you two either need to kiss or get back to eating dango. You've been sitting there for nearly a minute now, lovebirds." Unlike the time during their spar, the comment came directly from the real Yugao this time. Itachi was first to look up with a rosy tinge on his cheeks, but to the surprise of both Yugao and Itachi, Anko was quickly back in her own seat with the plate of dango in her lap and hiding a blush by eating her most favorite meal. Anko's face was lowered. Her hair was covering her eyes, but to Itachi, this person sitting across from him wasn't the same person he had been fighting against no more than an hour ago. But it was Yugao that was most startled by her roommate's change in demeanor. She had seen every side of Anko, and when she had called out her long stare with Itachi, she was expecting a rant at the very least, or a shuriken at the worst. But now seeing her recede into herself like this worried her somewhat. It wasn't common at all for Anko to do this. "Cough, well, seeing as we are nearly out of dango, I'll get some more. Anything you would like, Miss Yugao?" With a polite, "No thank you," from Yugao, Itachi walked into the store to buy some more sweets and allow some time to regain his own composure. But Yugao was quick to start asking about Anko's unusual behavior. "Don't say a thing, Yugao-ne." A dangerous glare came from Anko's as her best friend smiled innocently in her direction. "Oh, come now, Anko. I couldn't possibly let a moment like that pass without a little bit of teasing." Despite the fact the Yugao wasn't teasing her as much as she would be if the roles were reversed, she still had the urge to wipe that smug grin off her face. "Oh, go and sit on Hey 8. Sticking her tongue out, but Yugao wasn't fazed. "Oh, come on, Anko, he's a pretty nice guy anyway. Why not just say you like him? She tried her hardest to not sound patronizing, but it still probably sounded that way to her roommate. A sharp look was what she got in return first. We are dango buddies and nothing more, Yugaone. Anything more would be sacrilege to the gods of dango and the laws on dango buddies. Stating all of that matter-o-factually, with a rather serious tone, was the deadly serious 10 Commandments of dango. Oh, come on, Anko, you made that up. Made up or not, it's my religion, and I am devoted to it. The funny looks she got from the other patrons didn't seem to worry her, but she leaned over to make sure Itachi wasn't looking back out. You seem a little worried about what someone thinks of you, though. That's a first. Oh, shut it, Yugaone. Hell, he is 6 years younger than me. It'd be practically illegal. Huffing and crossing her arms. 6 years? True, he is only 17, but as an Umbu captain I'd say, he's nearly had more life experience than you. Along with the fact is quite a fine-looking young man and the heir to one of, if not the most important clans in the Leaf, I'd say he's a good catch. Yugao's blasé tone only served to annoy Anko more. Well, if he is clan heir, I'd bet he'd have rich and beautiful women throwing themselves at him. Knowing him, he'd probably have fun with more than a few. Sorry, Miss Anko, no such luck for me. Anko's eyes widened as she realized who had said the such a thing in such a tone dripping with amusement. Or would that be lucky for you, Ankone? The comment coming from her roommate was nearly enough to let go of a hand full of shuriken, but she decided to just pinch the bridge of her nose in defeat. Yugaone, I'm gonna get you back for that someday, she mumbled under her breath. As she continued to grumble, Itachi was kind enough to place the whole plate of dango in front of her, which earned him a mumbled thank you. For the next few minutes there was a comfortable silence. Yugao was happy just to close her eyes and rest in her chair for a few minutes, while Anko slowed down to savor her dango and Itachi sat and sipped on a cup of coffee he had got for himself at the counter. So itchy. He wanted to face palm but wouldn't give her the satisfaction. What's it like being part of such a big clan? Like it must be interesting having such a large family around. Despite Anko's genuine tone with the question, Itachi was quick to notice how carefully she was picking her words. He guessed that she might be fishing for a little answer for his earlier mood. It's okay, I guess. Having a big family around is nice, but I mostly speed time with training or with my little brothers, so I normally only meet them at clan events or just on the streets. He shrugged along with his answer, but Anko seemed satisfied. Hey, don't you have to do the great fireball jutsu to be fully recognized within the clan as a ninja? As she munched on another stick of dango. In a way, it's really just an old tradition from before the founding of the major villages. The elders are the only that still make it hold sway in the clan. You're not technically an adult ninja until you can perform it properly. I think it's outdated. He spat with venom at the end, which got a raised eyebrow from Yugao. Anko was slowed in her eating, but not for long. Well, if you become clan head and Hokage, you'll be able to change it. The honest smile and enthusiasm he got from Anko wasn't what he was expecting, and he couldn't help but smile slightly. One day, he thought to himself. 0000000. For the next half hour, Anko asked a few more questions while Itachi was happy to answer them. Even Yugao joined in asking a legend from within the Umbu about some of his fates and experiences. Even though he didn't normally talk about missions with others, he was mostly happy with sharing some tips and battle advice, to which Anko eagerly listened to. She also told him about her own training routine. She certainly has Naruto's work ethic for getting stronger, and certainly more than a bit of his craziness. He thought to himself offhandedly. But it wasn't too long before Yugao had to leave. Protection detail, as she waved goodbye. At least Hokage protection detail is one of the safer jobs in the Umbu. He sounds softly just as Yugao turned the corner. Yeah, but she's strong anyway. Hell, if she can beat me to a pulp, there aren't many jonin she couldn't beat. True, he shrugged. What happens though when 10 jonin of your level face her at once? His worried tone came through a little stronger than he wanted it to. He looked up to notice it was late afternoon. Well, at least my Saturday hasn't been boring. But a tap on his shoulder brought him from his daydreaming to see Anko with her grin. Hey, don't worry about Yugaone. She's super tough and old man Hokage is too nice to leave his bodyguards alone against an enemy. But who knows, maybe once you're Hokage you can't protect her yourself. The Hokage should protect all of the people in the village, shouldn't he? Like the little blonde twerp, she said, coolly finishing her last piece of dango. You think he shouldn't be? Anko wanted to know just how protective of the young Jinchuriki Itachi was, but to see the activation of his Sharingan in anger like he did made her flinch. Gulping, she was quick to raise her hands in apology. I'm sorry. I just wanted to see how far you would go for him. She tried to play it off, but Itachi was agitated beyond anything that she had seen of him. He is my little brother. What were you expecting, Miss Anko? He replied with a frosty tone. Hey, I didn't mean to offend. But Naruto isn't the only one he has kept safe from outside harm, all right? Getting out of her seat quickly but keeping her eyes away from the young Uchiha was harder than she expected. Look, thanks for the dango and the spar. It was fun, but I better get going. One quick wave goodbye with and she was gone in a swirl of leaves. Well, I could have ended that better. He thought to himself. He couldn't understand why he was so frustrated. But with the sudden spike of a certain Churka signature above him, he could only sigh. You know, it's quite shocking how similar you and your father are, you know that? For one, neither of you could ever talk to the finer sex. The old white-haired man was easy enough to see with his Sharingan activated, but he had a knack for the transparent escape technique. He merely closed his eyes and shook his head, but Jiraiya laughed. You both brood the same way as well. The Sannin wiped a mock tear from his eye. It's touching to know that I have a perverted guardian angle, but why were you spying on me? His exasperated tone made Jiraiya a little more serious. Research for my fine works of literature, but mostly because I thought our mutual blonde prankster would be with you. He seemed upset when he left the compound, but so I decided to let him get air before I talked to him. Was any of that time spent at a brothel? Itachi said rather coolly, but the look he got back from the Sannin would have frozen the blood in a lesser man's veins. I may not be serious all that often, young Uchiha, but that boy is the one thing I'm most concerned about in this world. Do not forget that. Seeing the Jiraiya like this was more than enough to remind Itachi of whom he was speaking to. My apologies, Lord Jiraiya. He dipped his head curtly. Perverseness aside, he was still a man that demeaned respect. No apologies needed, kid. Leaning forward in the seat, Jiraiya rested his arms on the table between them. The arranged nuptials really has gotten under your skin, hasn't it? His voice was low and soft. The tone the old spymaster was speaking in allowed no one to hear what he was saying. But Itachi's wide eyes spoke enough, and a pleased grin formed on the old man's lips. I protect the safety of this village even from those within it. Information that is of no use to Fugaku is kept by myself alone, but it doesn't stop me from hearing it anyway. In an instant, the playful mask of the old man was dropped, and the eyes of this battle-hardened shinobi was revealed. You couldn't fathom the lengths Hayashi went to in order to protect his daughters. In the end now, he is merely a puppet leader of the Hyuga, with the strings tied to the hands of elders from within the clan. So don't not be so quick to lay the blame at your father's feet. You shouldn't be as hard on your father for the arraignment as well. During the warring clans era and the early village era, arranged marriages the norm for the children of high-ranking ninja. It doesn't excuse the promise he made to you and your brother, but it still isn't uncommon for the children of clan heads. Kami, that makes me sound old. Jiraiya idly thought to himself. Well, if my own reaction is anything to go by, Naruto's reaction should be the one my father must be worried about. The dry comment was certainly enough to get a chuckle out of the old man. He certainly has a way with words, doesn't he?
Dondou me t'aime.
I could totally eat 40 bowls of ramen. Believe it. Sounds like our little blonde hell raiser now. 000000. Oh, just shut it, Dobe. Your stomach would explode before you got to 30. Rolling his eyes. Oh yeah, you wanna be. Naruto quickly swiveled his head, looking around, and Sasuke was quick to notice. Hear something, Naruto? Naruto suddenly snapped his head to a small sweets shop a few buildings down the road. I'd recognize that old perverted bastard's chuckle anywhere, pointing an accusing finger at a seemingly large white bush. "Oi, I'm a super pervert," was quickly yelled back up the street towards the pair from said bush. The Wicked Eye Hokage, Chapter 12. I didn't know you went on dates with Pervy Sage. Strolling casually to the table they were both sitting at. "I think you could do better," leaning over and whispering it to his older brother. "Hey, I'm a prize-winning catch you little hellion." Jiraiya's mock outrage only got a laugh out of Naruto. Sure you gray-haired old lecher." Scoffing at the old man, only him a slap over the head from Sasuke. "Be respectful." Before Naruto could start a wrestling match with his brother, a hand fell on his shoulder, holding him in place. It surprised Jiraiya and Sasuke that Itachi merely resting his hand on Naruto's shoulder could make him stop so suddenly. Sorry, big bro." Naruto's head was low and his words were far more respectful than normal. "Remember that in public you are representing the Uchiha little brother. A no-holds-barred wrestling match in a sweets shop would be far from appropriate." The statement had an edge that told Naruto there was little room for leeway. As Jiraiya watched Naruto sink back in his seat, it amazed him on how persuasive his was with his adopted little brother. But a statement quite as the grave from Sasuke soon got his attention. "Father told us about Izumi." Sasuke sunk into a chair beside his brothers. "He told us why they were after her as well," spitting the sentence through his teeth. "At least he was honest with you both." Itachi quietly thought to himself. "I miss her as well, but her funeral will be tomorrow, so you'll be able to say your final goodbyes." Watching the reactions of both boys surprised him at first. Thinking Naruto would yell and shout to the high heavens was almost a given, but seeing the usually rambunctious blonde sit with his head down tore into him. It was Sasuke's white knuckles and grinding teeth that concerned him, so a calming palm on his shoulder once again brought down the situation. Although Izumi was killed on the mission, she was not the only one. Naruto and Sasuke were quick to look up. Tomorrow's funeral will be a joint funeral with the Hyuga clan, along with the other members of Izumi's team that fell alongside her. Were they after the Byakugan as well, big brother? Sasuke's immediate words on the subject of Jujutsu was quick to get the attention of both Jiraiya and Itachi. "No, when I was talking with father, he said that Izumi was the only one to be targeted in such a manner. It is the reason why Shursui will be leading the mission to find and eliminate those responsible." "Well, if Shursui is going after them, they're as good as gone." Naruto spoke up rather surely. "Don't be so cocky-gaki. There are plenty of strong ninja out there," waggling his finger. "Oh, come on, Pervy Sage. Shursui is the strongest, only behind Big Bro." With Sasuke quick to back up his statement, even though with a little more respect for the old man, Itachi could only smile watching them both. 00000. For the next half-hour, Naruto was more than happy to regale Jiraiya the past months that he has been away for, but with the sun starting to drop below the western wall, it was time to go home. With Sasuke and Naruto setting off a number of steps ahead, it left Jiraiya at Itachi's side. "Sneaky like your father as well." The monotone comment was extremely quiet. "Whatever do you mean?" was Itachi's equally monotone reply, but Jiraiya lifted his hand to Itachi's shoulder. "Medical ninjutsu? Not a damaging jutsu, but simply a calming inflow of chakra to ease the heart and mind. I wouldn't have noticed it if it wasn't created by my very own teammate. I have been branching out with my abilities, Lord Jiraiya. I will certainly be giving seals my full attention into the future." "A fine aim, although I am guessing like your father you will have trouble with seals as well." Placing his hand under his chin, Jiraiya recalled some old memoirs. "In the years following his rise to Hokage, your father has become knowledgeable in the art of seals, but he still pales in comparison to the fourth. Well, no ninja can be perfect at everything." Itachi was quick to nod his head. "Unlike many of my clan, Lord Jiraiya, I know the limitations of the Uchiha, and unlike some of my clansmen, see our hubris all too clearly." A serious and somber expression was all that graced the older shinobi's face. "There is good in your clan, though, young one." Glancing ahead at the two boys with Naruto chasing Sasuke for blaspheming, against the ramen gods. The good seem to wilt and fall while the bad take root and grow ever stronger. Seeing the pain in the young Uchiha's eyes, Jiraiya stopped suddenly in the street, thinking back so many years to something his teacher told him. Something that had guided him throughout his highs, lows, and many turmoils during his life. When the tree leaves dance, one shall find flames. The fire's shadow will illuminate the village, and once again, the tree leaves shall bud anew. Itachi dipped his head with respect to the old man. His words were true, and it was the embodiment of the will of fire, something he had dedicated himself to many years ago, but sadly the moment wasn't to last.
Oi!
You better not be using that line in any of your novels, pervy sage. It's way too smart for you. You take that back, Gaki. I'm a brilliant writer, to which my thousands of loyal readers can acclaim. Thousands of fellow perverts more like it, was the mumbled response. But for I am the king of all perverts. I am the one and only super pervert, chanting his infamous nickname, to which the three others' sweat dropped. Ah, to hell with it, I'm going home. I'll see you later, pervy sage. With a quick spin on his heels, Naruto caught up to Sasuke as they kept moving towards the Uchiha compound, but as Itachi was about to follow, Jiraiya spoke up, the light-hearted tone from before completely disappearing. Tell you father I'll meet him tonight. Anything I should know about? I am one of the leading Umbu captains after all. The old man's face was totally blank. He's certainly got a terrific poker face. Idly thinking to himself. Unless you're the Hokage, you aren't privy to certain information. Remember, I still outrank you. Good night, kiddo. Turning slowly, he began to walk back towards the eastern gate. Putting two and two together, Itachi noted it was also the direction of the Leaf's red light district. Just make sure you're capable of making complete sentences when you arrive at the compound, Lord Jiraiya. But a thumbs up over his shoulder was all Jiraiya would respond with, and in a puff of smoke he gone. 0000000. Itachi was making his way back through the clan compound. He always enjoyed walking through the streets at night. The peacefulness and quite helped him calm his mind after a long mission. Not matter how cold or arrogant the clan could be, they were all family, and night was when all the family were with each other. It wasn't long before a pair of Uchiha police turned the corner. He quickly recognized as Tekka and Yakumi. Watching walk closer, he could see they were both chatting and laughing. Each of them had earned Itachi's respect not only for being skilled Jonin ninja, but also for being some of the first within the clan to openly support Naruto to become an honorary Uchiha. Walking past each other, Yakumi and Tekka gave respectful nods, to which Itachi returned. Thinking of how many of his clan's men envied him or outright despised him with his promotion into the Umbu, but it was a warm feeling to know those two congratulated him. You'll be greater than your father. At the time, being greater than father seemed a long way off, and now it seemed even further. Getting to the main house, he slid off his shoes and walked inside. Stepping into the dining room, he knew something was wrong. The silence was deafening. Naruto was sitting with Sasuke beside him, but both were extremely quiet for a simple dinner at home. Mother, she gave a warm smile. Father, I believe you'll be having a visitor tonight. Sitting down at the opposite end of the table to his father, Itachi was slow to begin eating. The apricot duck was lovely, but with Sasuke and Naruto being silent, nothing felt right at the table. Itachi, Fugaka's voice was flat. Would you be able to join me in my study after dinner? I have some things I'd like to ask you. Does it have to do with upcoming events, father? Placing his knife and fork beside his plate, Itachi met Fugaka's eyes with a steely look. Naruto and Sasuke were silent as the grave, but intently watching. Neither had seen Itachi like this, and neither knew the cause, so it only took one look between them to know this wasn't something to get involved in. It has to do with many things, my son. After the exchange, Fugaka didn't speak a word, while Mikito kept an extremely close eye on both them, while the two youngest boys were finishing their dinner. Leaving the table in silence, Sasuke and Naruto were quickly off to bed. Both were extremely confused about the exchange at dinner, so without pressing the issue, both left without a word. Mikito stood silently to remove the younger boys' plates, but was careful not to take her eyes away from the pair still seated. So father, what would you like to talk about? The comment was as sharp as a kunai. Itachi. Perhaps this conversation should be reserved for my study. Itachi's figure didn't any relax in his chair. I think not. Whatever has to be said should be said here. In front of my brothers. Itachi's hand slapped down on the table as both rose in their seats. But as their sharingans flared, they both noticed glints in the corners of their eyes. You too had better calm down this instant. Mikito's voice was low and deadly, and she held a pair of steak knives in her left hand, while her other was outstretched towards the table. Looking down, both noticed that a knife had embedded into the table directly between their pointer and ring fingers of both men. Itachi, go to the study room or get out. Saying that to her beloved son cut her apart on the inside, but desperate times called for equal measures. And you, not only turning to Fugaku but walking directly to him while glaring eye to eye. You will listen to your son and heir. You started this, so now you finish it or I will. Looking up into the eyes of the man she loved, she wouldn't allow herself to break at a time like this. Lucky they both backed down. You will both go to the study room and word this out as father and son. Pointing to the door out of the dining room, Mikito could only glare daggers at both of them, but she prayed Itachi would not leave. Seeing Itachi stand slowly and start to walk towards Fugaku's study room, she let out a breath of relief. Thank you. He tried to thank for bringing them both back, but he was stood silent as she turned with tears in her eyes. You'll be sleeping on the couch tonight, husband. Absent-mindedly throwing the left-over plates in the sink without a care as they shattered. Walking towards the door, she finally turned to look at him with tears in her eyes. Mend the transgressions with Itachi or don't bother mending things with me. Watching Mikito leave the room without a second glance back, Fugaku could only stand helpless. He loved her like no one else, and he would have rather seen her hit him than the icy words she left him with. Now he could only try to fix his standing with Itachi. 000000. Itachi was angry, but it wasn't all to do with his father. He was angry at himself that he had become so caught up in his emotions to allow another outburst like that. But it was done, ruining things with Anko earlier and now with his parents. He would have cursed himself if his father wasn't sitting in front of him. He heard what his mother had said, and seeing his father like this still hurt. Seeing the man he had looked up to and trained under, someone he admired and wished to be like. But now he saw his father in a different light, a broken light. Fragmented and unbroken, trying to hold it together. Thinking back to Jiraiya's words, he swore to himself he would be more reserved now. But only if father understood where he truly was. My son. Sighing and running his hands over his tired eyes and through his graying hair, he pleaded, I wish only for your well-being and happiness. But in this world we live in, sometimes we must sacrifice. With his absent response, he continued on. Look, my son. I have lost much over my lifetime, enough to make me see clearly. But my vision is clouded when my family and my village in at risk. How am I supposed to put one before the other? Like in the case of my predecessor. Not reacting outwardly was difficult, but hearing what his father was saying only confirmed his suspicions on his little brother's lineage. You mean he is truly? With a slow nod of his head, Fugaku confirmed his gut feeling, but instead of being happy at the news, a new rage boiled. His heritage. Standing quickly, activating the Sharingan. How long could that knowledge have saved him from torment? Standing quickly, Itachi was about to storm out with any repercussions be damned, but a single phrase halted him. You may as well have slit his throat yourself and saved IWA the trouble. It was lucky that the chakra and sound suppression tags were active in the room. The chakra alone radiating from Itachi's body made his long hair rise, and the Fugaku viably had to stop himself from moving in his seat. Touring with a white-hot rage burning in his eyes, Itachi's sheer power rivaled that of any sitting Kage, but Fugaku kept his cool. You act as if it isn't the truth, son. Watching Itachi march towards him with his Sharingan blazing into his soul would have made even him falter, but he couldn't this night. But just as Itachi reached him ready to attack, Fugaku leapt in his seat. A mere inch from Itachi's eyes, then Itachi's world was black. 000000. This place he was in, it wasn't natural. Foreign, alien, almost evil. Through the blood red and the pitch black, Itachi could make out figures, or at least one figure standing alone. As he watched, over a dozen more shadows began to circle the single figure, but one laid cowering on the ground. Watching the scene in abstract red and black, nothing seemed to happen until weapons appeared in their hands. Then the sounds of battle became deafening. At first it was the screech of metal on metal, but soon it was the screams and pleas overpowered by the sizzling of human flesh of fire nature ninjutsu. It was something all Uchiha had to become used to. Fire and the Uchiha were one and the same, and any that couldn't handle the stress of battle didn't last long. One by one, the shadowy figures fell. One dropped after losing their head. Another with his own ninjato plunged through his chest, and one other simply being turned to ash. One by one they all fell, but with the sprays of blood the shadowed figure became more revealed. Soon the figure became clear. His father stood with 4 still at his sides, and as the sounds of battle dropped, he could only hear the mumbled conversation of those still standing. The battle had raged with none of the combatants seemingly moving, but the outcomes had all been the same for the shadowy figures. Death had come to many already, but these last 4 had not met the same fate, but had no injury had been landed against Fugaku. Watching this black and red horror was hard enough, but it was his father that he feared. He simply stood with dead eyes. Nothing troubled him, nor did the deaths of these men affect him. When the mumbles stopped, all 4 had resumed their fighting positions, but it seemed to matter little. He watched as Fugaku's hands moved slowly but with undoubted precision. Serpent, tiger, dragon, horse. Never having seen that combination of hand signs, he wondered what it could have been. But what they were was merely horror. Fire poured out a seemingly unstoppable vortex. Then a giant dragon head appeared at its peak. As it rose, it began to light the shadows from the men he was facing. Their faces were twisted with fear and disbelief. They were frozen in the light of death. Looking at them, he could only imagine the fear they had. Within a blink, the dragon's body split, creating 4 separate dragons, all connected to the stream that still bellowed from Fugaku. In unison they turned, facing down to their victims, and with the speed of white-hot flame they descended on the souls standing below. Closing his eyes didn't stop the sounds from burning their way into his mind. He had been in the Umbu for many years, but he was never this brutal in the way he killed those who had to be. A simple enough genjutsu to immobilize the target, then a blade through the heart or brain did the job. But watching what his father had done to those men sickened him. "Tell Inoki what you saw here today." Looking back to the gruesome scene, his father walked towards the IWA ninja cowering on the ground. Kneeling down in front of this man, he was still covered in the blood and ash from those he had killed. "You will give this to your Tsuchikage." Sliding an envelope from his robe, he placed it in the terrified IWA ninja's hand and shooed him off. As the terrified ninja took his first step away, the horrific episode ended as the ghostly corpses faded away as Fugaku walked towards him. Mercenary ninja of the Red Bear Battalion. Hearing his father begin to talk, he attempted to turn away from him, but he was locked in place. Even with his Sharingan blazing, he couldn't see through this genjutsu or even try to break it. "Is that how you got your moniker, father?" "No, son, this is how I earned my moniker." Turning towards his son, he could still only see rage in his eyes. "Itachi." Closing the distance, he was nearly the exact same height and looked him in the eyes. They were filled with anger, but he could see that this had scared him enough so that he could talk. "I didn't begin this to impress you or to make you fearful of me. I have showed you this because I will not allow you, Sasuke or Naruto, to become anything like myself. But despite my best efforts, the council was able to have you promoted to the Umbu." Watching him walk forward, he noticed his father in a different light. The blood that had covered his face was that of his younger self. Gone were the detriments, and it paled him as he looked upon features of his father. To be frank, he was nearly a spitting image of himself. The tear through creases under his eyes weren't as pronounced, but they were noticeable enough, along with the dark and wilder hair that was worn in a ponytail. As if off instinct, he could almost picture his own face alongside his father's. "My life up until this point has been about providing for you and your brothers, and that duty of mine will never be relinquished until my death. But as the leader of both the village and the Uchiha, I have failed. 00000. Jarring back into the real world, Itachi doubled over, holding his stomach, feeling as if he was about to throw up, but to his right, he could see his father using his desk as support while holding his eyes. His body seemingly moved on its own accord to help, but an outstretched hand coated with blood stopped him. "Father?" The worried tone was evident, but hearing his son so worried made him smile. "One of the prices of our eyes, son." Trying noticeably hard to steady himself, Fugaku rose from the desk, wiping away the blood with his sleeve. "Along with the fact it's the first time I've used that technique." Watching him take several calming breaths, he slid back into his seat, seeing that Itachi was somewhat calmer but still with many questions. So with a polite nod, he showed he would be willing to answer them. "What was in the letter?" "Facts and threats, and the less you know of it, the better. Simple as that, son." Without so much as a blink. He rolled his eyes but knew that plausible deniability was important for all villages. "The technique you just used then?" "That was the Tsukuyomi. It's the second most powerful genjutsu in existence. As you could tell, it allows the user to warp time and space to their will." After explaining, he raised his hands to rub his still sore eyes. Its disadvantages seemed devastatingly clear. The monotoned comment started a laugh, but it ended as a cough. "Its effects are far more taxing than they even appear, alongside the large amount of chakra it requires and the severe eye pain. Merely having the manjikyu active will eventually cause permanent blindness." Watching his father continue to rub his eyes was somewhat worrying. "How far has it degraded your own eyesight, father?" But he merely waved off at the question. "Despite my age, son, my eyes are still as sharp as my youth." He held up 3 fingers. "This is the 3rd time in which I have used it. The first being after my friend's sacrifice, and the second being on the night of Naruto's birth." Itachi's eyes widened. "Why, you mean, father?" He chuckled. "Yes, with the manjikyu I was capable of not only fighting the 9 tails in the story that is told now, but I was able to control it with these eyes." Staring at his father, he couldn't believe what he'd heard. His father wasn't an arrogant man, nor was he a show-off. But to hear that he had not only fought it but controlled the beast was incredible. "You haven't told the clan?" Fugaku sat contemplating the answer. "No, I haven't, nor will I. Not even the village elders know that I could control it. They only know that I was able to subdue it while the 4th sealed it inside of Naruto." Itachi took the seat opposite to his father. "Son, few in the Uchiha know of the manjikyu's existence, and if I were to tell them of the powers it could give someone, the clan would implode in on itself in search of that power. It's why I was hesitant on even telling you such a thing before you became the head of the clan." He still sat in silence. Fugaku could see the indecision written on his face, but trying to make up for the lies told over 2 decades weren't easily fixed. But this was the situation he put himself in, and there was only one way out. "My time as head of the Uchiha and the village have taught me many things, Itachi, but I never desired to become the Hokage. Minato was my friend. He was a great warrior but a far greater visionary, and he was going to be the one to lead this village into its future. But he gave himself to the knowledge that I would lead it in his stead." Taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes, remembering that night all those years ago. "Sadly, son, not even I can tell you of that man yet. I can no longer lead this village and the clan in good conscience, knowing that I am too far removed to the happenings of my own clansmen. It's why I have come to a decision." Opening his top drawer, he pulled out a small scroll. The Uchiha clan crest was emblazoned upon it, as well as the wear of decades of use. Untying it gently, he revealed its contents to be some of the greatest name in Uchiha history. "Itachi, the scroll contains the names the leaders of the Uchiha for the last half-millennium. Our clan fought for centers through the warring clans era, but we still survive to this day thanks to the fates of these men and women." Looking at the names written, he could see Fugaku's name and thumbprint was fresh, along with a small paragraph below. "Fought the 9-tailed demon fox alongside the 4th Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village, was named Hokage in his 31st year." Looking back to the other names that were inscribed into it, he noticed the legend of the Uchiha himself. Madara Uchiha. Looking closer, he read of his feats. brought about the end of the warring clan's era alongside the first Hokage. Known to have controlled the nine-tailed demon fox and brought the first Hokage to near death before being defeated. Both first and second Hokage stated he was the most powerful Uchiha of his time. Reading through these names and feats was incredible. It had survived countless wars and the changes of eras and was still part of this clan. But he looked up to see his father gather a small brush and jar of ink, placing it on the desk alongside the scroll. I know now that I cannot serve the Uchiha and the village equally. These past few days have proven that fact. But I can bring about a change that will bring the Uchiha into the future where we belong. My son, my era was one of war and death, of chaos and misery. Itachi could only sit stunned as Fugaku handed him the brush. So from tomorrow forward you will be the Uchiha clan's new era. You'll do what I couldn't, son. Fugaku held the brush in his outstretched hand, but Itachi was seemingly frozen. With a quick shake of his head, though, he took the brush, but it fell short of the page as he raised his eyes with a suspicious look. The shimmer of red across his eyes showed that he was still wary of the deal despite his father opening up. You'll be wanting me to go through with the deals made while you were still clan head. He let out a long sigh but shook his head. As you are now the clan head, I can no longer interfere with internal clan business. All clans have a large degree of autonomy and the right to not have the Hokage making choices for them. But if you do wish to cancel the deal, you will need to arrange that with Lord Hayashi and Lord Hiruzen. He raised an eye at hearing the second name. The deal is also with the Sarutobi clan. Why wasn't I informed? Fugaku just shrugged his shoulders. Yes, there is another marriage planned. It is between the youngest daughter of Hayashi with Lord Hiruzen's grandson, and you never asked if there were any other details of the wedding, son. The monotone voice Fugaku ended with only earned a red shimmer in his eyes, but Itachi couldn't think of anything to retort with, so his mouth stayed shut for the moment. So if I was to bring an end to the arrangement, it wouldn't only look bad in the eyes of the Hyuga, it would look poorly in the eyes of the Sarutobi as well. You've already come to see the finer points in leading a clan, I see. Inwardly smiling to himself, he could see that Itachi had finally come to realize just how perilous some decisions could be, but not at all surprised at how he had been yet to make a snap decision based on emotions. But he knew that if Itachi was to become clan head, he would have to make a choice now.
Son.
He leant forward, crossing his fingers under his chin. If you truly wished for it, you could have me escorted from the compound under armed guard while you call an end to an engagement that could bring unity to a pair of clans that have been rivals for more than 3 centuries. As the Hokage, I am unable to interfere with internal clan affairs, while at the same time I must obey a request from a clan head to leave their compound. I wouldn't dash. He was cut off by both of Fugaku's hands slamming on the table. You are the head of the Uchiha, and I know you are not an angry person, but before I opened your eyes a little you were ready to come to blows with me. His Sharingan flared as he glared down at his son. You want me to force you out, Lord Hokage? Itachi spat the title at his father as he slammed his hands down onto the desk as his own Sharingan swirled into action to oppose his father's dojutsu. The face down held with both chakras flaring, Itachi was ready for his father to use the Mangekyou again, but he felt his father's chakra settle as he closed his eyes and sat back down, leaving Itachi standing as he glared down at him. Watching him sit carefully in his chair, he started to calm his own chakra. I have made so many wrong decisions, my son, but this will not be one of them. He pushed the scroll and ink across the table. He opened his eyes, looking up to the new head of the Uchiha. The Uchiha need this, as does the village and the elders. I can't be the one to bring the Uchiha into the future. I was brought up to be Uchiha first. I was raised to be a killer, a monster, an Uchiha. I raised you to be Itachi of the Leaf Village, but I still failed to keep the claws of the elders out of your back. His eyes opened without the anger they held moments ago. They trust you more than they trust myself, but I trust in the knowledge that you would put your brothers before anything else. I'm glad you were willing to put them both above me, and despite the fact that you did, so I know you are a kind person, my son. I truly want you and your brothers to be the savoirs of this clan. So all decisions will be mine to make, with no influence from yourself? Fugaku could see the suspicion that laced his son's eyes. Absolutely no influence. They'll be more than willing to help you adjust to the new position and the workload that comes with it though. Itachi gave an agreeable nod, noting that it was a fair offer before a quick realization struck him. This position will forcibly remove me from Umbu service. What a shame, being removed from an organization that you don't particularly like while it leaves you with more free time and less of a danger to your own well-being. Itachi watched his father carefully but with less suspicion than had been there earlier. If I were to refuse to become the clan head, would I not receive blowback from you or the clan? He sat back in the chair, letting a weight off his shoulders. None whatsoever. This is a private meeting between myself and you, my son. I would simply remain as clan head as if I hadn't offered you the position yet, and you would remain in the Umbu. But if you wish to remain in the Umbu, you are more than able to renounce the heir status in favor of Sasuke and his eventual line alongside the Hyuga. A sharp look returned to his eye, but his Sharingan remained inactive. So as long as you remain clan head, Sasuke's marriage will happen? I am afraid so. I cannot in good conscience back out of a deal that would cause the greatest rift between clans in the village's history, son. Shaking his head slowly, but to his surprise Itachi didn't object. He merely picked up the brush and wrote his name down on the scroll before standing and began to walk out.
Son.
He called out just as Itachi's hand was about to deactivate the privacy seal. May I know what you plan to do? But he didn't turn. I will be discussing the arrangements with Lord Hayashi after the funeral tomorrow, Lord Hokage, and if I agree to the terms both Hayashi resettle during this meeting, I will allow it. Though once both Hinata and Sasuke graduate at the end of the week, I will have them both informed, and if either choose to refuse, I will allow them to have it cancelled. Itachi didn't wait for a reply before he disabled the shield and walked out, while Fugaku sat massaging his temple. It ended far better than it could have. He told himself as he felt a presence enter the room. It's poor manners to sneak into a clan compound, Jiraiya. But instead of a witty remark, as he was expecting, the older man's silence gained his attention instantly. News. The land of water is about to get messy. His eyes were hard, and he took a seat across from the Hokage, but with a quick glance down he was able to Itachi's name inscribed on a scroll besides Fugaku's and the last clan heads of the Uchiha. Again, it was unlike Jiraiya not to tease somewhat as Fugaku carefully put away the scroll. Details. A half-ram hand sign brought back the privacy seal. Yagura lashed out after a series of attacks against the covert convoys from Kyūbi that was supplying him weapons. After nearly a week of raids against the rebels, they finally hit back. With the last of the funds we had supplied them, they brought the services of a mercenary organization. My contact with the rebels said that 2 of these mercenaries belonged to the same group that Orochimaru belonged to after he left the village. If they belonged to the Akatsuki, how could the rebels pay for such powerful ninja? Most of our funding went towards arming their troops and funding their own information networks, didn't it? It did, yes. But the Akatsuki are extremely cheap for the level or service they provide, and now that loyalists have been driven onto the back foot, May has decided it's now or never. Taking a few steadying breaths did little to help Fugaku's uneasiness on the situation. Could the rebels even take Kirigakure by force, Jiraiya? Anyone bar myself would say it's a 60/40 chance in the loyalists' favor, but I've had my contacts poke around inside of Kiri itself for these last few months, and Yagura's grip on Kirigakure itself has been waning ever since Kyūbi refused to take part in any public aspect of the conflict. Also, of the 4,000 ninja, it can still muster as many as 30% could switch allegiance if the Kiri rebels attacked with enough force to possibly depose Yagura. That would possibly take the rebel numbers from roughly 900 to well over 2,000, and I am inclined to believe that could be enough to tip the balance. What about further interference from Kyūbi? If they've been sending weapons and funds, they could send troops if the situation became too perilous for the Yagura loyalists. Jiraiya shook his head though. I highly doubt it. My guess is that Kyūbi knows that one of the other major nations is supporting the rebels. With Suna being so underfunded as it is and IWA hating Kiri nearly as much as it hates us, they've probably deduced it's us funding them. So they won't openly enter a conflict that would result us entering into it against them. True, AI might look all muscle and no brains, but he certainly is a devious Kage and battle commander. Jiraiya only nodded his head slowly, but sadly Fugaku could only inquire about other worrying news. Anything new on the Akatsuki in the meantime? Regretfully not, even since AIM, Hasno, and most of my contacts within the Land of Rain went dark a couple of months back. Even I haven't been able to get a peep out of the Rain Village, and I don't make that statement lightly. The same can be said for the Umbu I've been forced to send in. The lucky ones only make it out with their lives. Shaking his head woefully. Well, if push comes to shove, I could dash. He was quickly cut off by Fugaku raising his hand. I honestly couldn't allow it, Jiraiya. For the minute you are the Leaf's finest spy master, and even a small chance of losing you in AIM would put us at a severe disadvantage if any of the other nations were to attempt something. Jiraiya sat still for a moment contemplating whether or not he should just sneak in, but eventually decided against. But he'll see the three of you soon, please be all right, he assured himself. Allowing his more somber mood to pass, he decided to press on different matters, but he could already see Fugaku bracing himself to confront them. I was able to catch up with the Gaki today, along with Itachi and Sasuke. They seemed to be coming along nicely, although Itachi was wound up tighter than a grandfather clock. He reminds me of a certain someone I knew back in the day. A slightly teasing tone graced his lips. I am aware of the similarities between myself and my son at that age, Jiraiya. He droned out in a decisively less amused tone. But I was not aware you meet with them today. Both Naruto and Sasuke were quite at dinner, while Itachi never even graced the matter. To this statement, Jiraiya's smirk dropped. Really? I told Itachi of inform you I was planning on meeting you this evening. Glancing back towards the door, Jiraiya could only scratch his chin, and Fugaku ran his hands through his hair as they came to the same conclusion. Extremely distracted, isn't he? Fugaku sighed out wearily, to which Jiraiya nodded. Who knows, maybe some time out of the Umbu might do the kid some good. It's a toxic environment for anyone, and no one can handle it forever. Not even your little protege. Jiraiya gave a quick teasing glance up towards the roof as a near-invisible shimmer seemed to narrow its eyes upon him. I'm glad to see that she picked up my little technique in no time. Perhaps she does her own research on a male hot springs, he. Grinning smugly up towards the roof, Captain Wraith revealed herself while glaring daggers down at the old man. Fugaku snapped his fingers, and as he had hoped, she appeared at his side rather than anywhere near Jiraiya. Report. She stood as she placed an unopened scroll on his desk and returned to her kneel beside him. Has Danzo been enjoying your presence, Miss Pixie? The smug comment came again and shook her from the perfectly controlled Umbu posture as she twitched upwards, but was stopped in her tracks by Fugaku raising his hand. Enough. Need I remind you, Jiraiya, that she nearly removed a vital body part from you the last time you aggravated her? But the old man only pouted childishly, while a particularly unprofessional snort of amusement escaped the captain. Waving it off, Jiraiya finally stood from his seat. She's a devious little one, I'll give her that much, but if there is nothing else you wish to discuss, Lord Hokage, I think it's best if I was going. As he was about to unseal the room, Fugaku spoke up. Did I make the right choice with Itachi? You made the only choice you could have made, but he needs a rock in his life other than his two brothers. If they get washed away by the current of this world once they become genin, he'll be washed away with them and he'll never be the same. With a wave over his shoulder and a respectful nod, Jiraiya unsealed the room before body flicking out of presence, leaving the Hokage and his chief Umbu in the room. Goodbye, Jiraiya, he huffed softly in an irritated tone. Master. Wraith spoke up softly. Her voice was not scrambled by the regular sound inhibitor seal placed within her mask, and it was comforting to hear her real voice after such a long time. While I believe you have done the best you could have with your sons, it is clearly strange that Itachi is agitated enough to not even notice me throughout our conversation. Your point being? His patience was beginning to wane, but he hoped Wraith didn't mind the edge on his tone. The point being that if you simply give all the power to him now, it will seem to him that you are coddling him, or worse, patronizing him for being so wound up in this situation. I would suggest keeping his workload low, but make it something that challenges him enough to keep him busy, or perhaps an apprentice to train during his off hours. Locking his desk, he stood quickly enough that his chair nearly toppled over, but Wraith caught it before it fell. While it only served to aggravate him more, a handful of steadying breaths brought him to a relative cool. You believe an apprentice would suit Itachi? Raising her head to meet the eyes of her master, Fugaku could only stare into the hazy onyx eyes of the soul behind the demonic skull that made up her mask. I was nothing before you, a useless genin destined to die at the tail end of the Third Great War. You raised me up to be something greater than I ever could have become on my own, and while you could have used me as a simple tool, you never sent me down that path, no matter how willing I was to travel it. Bowing deeply so her forehead rested upon her palms, she knelt before her master. I will be forever in your debt for allowing me to become who I am today, so just imagine how Itachi could affect someone's life. He is your son after all. I'll sleep on it, Captain, and thank you, that'll be all for tonight. With a nod, she too disappeared from the room, leaving Fugaku with only his thoughts for company. If he was anything like me when I was his age, I'd be sleeping in the Hokage's mansion tonight. 00000. Walking from his study, he soon found himself standing in the middle of the main living room. It was the larger of the two living rooms in the house, but he preferred the large size of the Uchiha clan's main house compared to the somewhat outrageous size of the Hokage mansion. While he was offered the mansion, he had decided not to take it, seeing as all of Minato's and Kushina's belongings were still held there. He wanted them kept in a safe location for Naruto once he came of age. That's going to be one hell of a talk with him once he graduates. While he had been preparing for the time he would have to tell Naruto of his heritage, he hated the fact the current events had spiraled out of control and how they could affect the outcome of their conversation. With Itachi informing Sasuke of his engagement, it should allow me some time with Naruto at least, and before Naruto learns of the match. Taking a long breath as he rubbed the sleep from his eyes, he hoped that Mikito would be less hostile tomorrow, but he couldn't hold anything of the actions against her no matter how he looked at them. He was brought from his pondering by soft footsteps on the timber floor behind him. Dad? Is everything okay? Turning sharply, he looked to the doorway to see Naruto standing with a glass of water along with his nightcap and pajamas. Dad, you probably wouldn't call me that if you knew the lies I've told you, Naruto. Forcibly stopping himself from thinking that way, he put on a brave face with a ghost of a smile. Not entirely, Naruto. Leaning back into the couch, Naruto quickly jumped down beside him, sipping on his drink. You and Big Bro aren't agreeing on something, are you? It wasn't put forward as a question, so all he could do was nod. He and myself don't always see eye to eye, Naruto, and I could never hate him for that, not matter how much we argue. He ruffled Naruto's hair softly, earning a pout from the blonde, but it soon turned into far more serious look. Is it anything we should be worried about? Asking far more cautiously than Fugaku would have expected. You mean we, as in you and Sasuke, don't you? He cast a questioning eye over the boy while Naruto could only scratch the back of his head. Yeah. Well, he might not be my blood brother, but I'll look out for him the same as I look out for Itachi, Databeo. Pulling his adopted son in, he gave the blonde a tight hug, and although it was to Naruto's chagrin, he soon returned it. I'm glad you're looking out for your brothers. They need you as much as you need them, and don't ever be embarrassed to say that. He was smiling outwardly, but on the inside he berated himself for keeping yet another lie from you, boy, by gracefully sidestepping his question, but now was neither the time or place to be answering such things. Giving Naruto one last pat on the head, he pulled back and placed his empty cup on the coffee table in front of them. Okay, now it's late enough, so head straight off to bed and to sleep. It might be a Sunday tomorrow, but I want you well rested for it. Naruto quickly nodded, as he rather not wished the father tone to be raised, so jumping from the couch, he made his way back to the door only to stop. Hey, Dad. Dad wasn't something Naruto called him often. Only twice had he called him Dad, so it instantly drew his attention to the blonde looking down at his feet in the doorway. Yes, son. As Naruto lifted his head, Fugaku's deep onyx eyes met the cerulean blue orbs that belonged to a man that lived on through his son. He doesn't hate you either, you know? Those words, dripping with sincerity, were like kunai slicing through his heart, but he wouldn't allow a falter here. I know, son. I know. A warm smile followed Naruto as he smiled with a quick love you, Dad. before he raced back to his bedroom, but he could only sit in silence. Minato, Kushina, please forgive me, was all he could whisper out. They will have to forgive me as well, husband. Fugaku jumped at not even sensing Mikito sneak up on him in such a way. It's been a long time since she's seen active service, but she was an incredible jonin and genjutsu mistress. He thought back to himself. Moving himself slightly to one side, hoping for her to sit next to him, he was disappointed that simply stood in front of him. Itachi. Her voice was stern, but it held next to none of the malice it held earlier. I don't know, but as of tomorrow morning he is that head of the clan. The lack of a response worried him, but as he looked up his wife held no anger in her eyes. He said that he will be talking to Hayashi tomorrow about the details of the arrangement, but I don't know if he will cancel it or not. You wouldn't be able to stop him if he did anyway, so there is little point in dwelling on it, husband. Her tone was cool. You heard all of what Naruto said? To which she nodded. He has Kushina's heart. She was always looking out for me when we were squad mates. Thinking back to the old times under Tsukumo-sensei brought a smile to her lips. Genin together, Chunin together, Jonin together, and my best friend until the end. Looking down to see her husband slumped over, she could imagine what would be going through his, and although she may have been harsh earlier, in the end it had to be done. Fugaku hadn't come to tears since the night of the Nine-Tails attack, but tonight he felt everything well against him. He had to be a rock, but all men have a breaking point in the end, but as snapped his eyes shut in an attempt to keep it in. His angle placed her hands on his shoulders. Gazing up, he met the eyes of the woman he fell in love with. She was his light to the darkness that surrounded him in his youth and the rock he could depend upon. Not having her with him these last few days had tore him more than he could ever have thought possible. When you tell Naruto of his heritage and his burdens, he must be with us. Sasuke most of all needs to be with him, to accept him for who he is, or he'll lose himself. Nodding quickly to keep further tears from welling in his eyes, Fugaku agreed. Once the arrangement with the Hyuga has been settled, I will bring them all home, and they can both learn the truth. Do you think Naruto will accept us back into his life? Mikito whispered. He has every right not to. We have kept everything from him except his mother. But if he goes, Sasuke may go with him. Finishing that sentence, he could feel Mikito's hands tense with her nails digging into his shoulders. But he felt her release her grip slightly. Like Naruto said, Itachi doesn't hate either of us, and no matter what we have withheld from Naruto and in Sasuke, they have become strong enough to handle themselves. So if they wish to go, we shouldn't try to stop them. Taking her hands off his shoulders, she just nodded, knowing that they couldn't hold the boys within the compound against their will. Husband, I'll be returning to bed, but for the moment I do not wish to spend the night with you. Walking back towards a cupboard, she had prepared a pillow and blanket for him, but did little more than place them at his feet. I'll see you in the morning. As she began to walking to the doorway, Fugaku began to feel the darkness close in around him. Mikito, I love you. Stopping in the door frame, she turned but didn't meet his eyes. I love you too, husband. Please don't ever forget that.